Chapter 1030. Aku. Hearing the following conversation, Song Qing-shu couldn't help but be startled. When Aku was brought back to Yinjing City, there were too many things later. He didn't think about how to settle her, so he handed her over to Prince Kong to take care of and almost forgot her existence. Why did Han Xingzhou's words seem to be related to her? The little princess of the Ping, Shi Wang family? Li Keqiu was shocked and weighed in his heart. Now the situation in Jianghuai area was indeed a bit delicate. But after all, she didn't openly rebel against the imperial court and had always been respectful. But Wu Sangui was different. The imperial court had always known of his rebellious heart. Wu Sangui's daughter in Yinjing City was equivalent to having a hostage in hand, which could make him hesitate to take action. Therefore, the imperial court would only attach more importance to Wu Sangui's daughter than to their own family. I think Lord Li already has a judgment in your heart. Han Xingzhou smiled slightly. There is no harm in revealing a secret to Lord Li. Princess Aku of the Ping, Shi Wang Mansion has been successfully rescued by the people we sent. What? Li Keqiu stood up in surprise. Not to mention him. Even Song Qing-shu was shocked. Aku was rescued by the people of the Southern Song dynasty? Presumably, Wu Sangui and the Southern Song dynasty must have reached some agreement, but he didn't know what it was. Princess Aku was not only rescued from Yinjing City, but also safely sent back to Lin Prefecture. Han Xingzhou continued. Linen? Li Keqiu had a strange expression. In his opinion, since Aku was rescued, she should return to Shanghai Pass. Why was she sent to Linen thousands of miles away? As if seeing his doubts, Han Xingzhou smiled and said, Lord Li, don't worry. We didn't use Princess Aku as a hostage. It was Ping Shi Wang's idea to send Princess Aku to Linen. Why? Li Keqiu frowned and asked. He really couldn't figure out why he would take the initiative to send his daughter as a hostage. Because our great Song dynasty and Ping Shi Wang have established an alliance. In order to make this relationship more stable, Ping Shi Wang specially sent his daughter to the Lin, an imperial palace, to become the imperial concubine of our great Song emperor. Han Xingzhou's words were like a sudden clap of thunder, shocking both Li Keqiu and Song Qing-shu, who was on the roof, in his silence. Aku became the Song emperor's consort. Song Qing-shu's mind went blank for a moment, and he even had a sour feeling. Although he had no feelings for Aku, he had a deep impression of her beauty. She had inherited her mother's beauty, Chen Yuan's beauty. It would not be an exaggeration to say that she was a beauty that could cause the downfall of nations. The man's possessiveness made Song Qing-shu extremely unhappy, but his expression soon became strange. Wait a minute, the current emperor of the Southern Song dynasty should be Zhao Go. He was a famous eunuch emperor in history. Of course, Zhao Go was not a eunuch from the start. He used to be a very normal man. But one day, when he was having sex with the imperial concubines in the palace, the eunuch outside rushed in a panic and told him that the Jin Kingdom's army was only a few dozen miles away. Zhao Go was scared out of his wits. He immediately shriveled up and hurriedly led everyone to escape. Behind them, the Golden Crow technique led 100,000 cavalry in pursuit. Zhao Go ran with all his might in front. In the end, he ran all the way to the seaside and took a boat out to sea. Only then did he recover from the shock. This was the famous search of the mountains and the sea to capture Zhao Go. Later, with the efforts of the army to rescue the emperor, they finally defeated the Golden Crow technique. Only then did the situation of the Southern Song dynasty stabilize. But because of the shock of this incident, Zhao Go could no longer act like a man. In addition, his son died young. In the end, he had no choice but to adopt the son of the royal family as the crown prince. From then on, the imperial line of the Song dynasty finally returned from the line of Taizong Zhao Guangyi back to the line of Taizong Zhao Guangyin. Some people said that this was retribution for the candlelight axe shadow. The heavens returned justice to Zhao Guangyin. This is another story, so I will not talk about it for now. The reason why Song Qing-shu knew so clearly was because of the explosion of information in his era. There was a lot of historical data. In addition, the Song dynasty had already been destroyed, so there was nothing to hide. That was why he knew the fact that Zhao Go was impotent. But after staying in this world for a long time, Song Qingshu realized that no one knew about this. But then again, it made sense. The emperor could not act like a man and had no children. If this got out, the foundation of the country would be shaken if they were not careful. Therefore, this must be the top secret of the Southern Song dynasty. Only a few people knew the inside story. Wu Sangue obviously made a mistake this time. He wanted to use his daughter's beauty to win Zhao Go's favor and fight for more benefits for himself. But in the end, he stupidly sent his daughter to the palace to live as a widow. Even though Zhao Go had become a eunuch, Song Qingshu was still a little unhappy about this. He did not know what Dongfang Muxue did to make such a big mistake. The next time he returned to Jing City, he would give her a good spanking. But when he thought of Dongfang Muxue's proud and aloof look, Song Qingshu shuddered. Wanting to spank her was really asking for death. Even though Song Qingshu's martial arts today were not below Dongfang Muxue's, and she was still injured, so it was impossible for her to be his opponent, but Song Qingshu always felt a little afraid in front of her. Maybe it was because the scene of him being chased by her was too deep, so he subconsciously did not dare to use the shameless methods that he usually used to bully other women. Song Qingshu also realized this. A man's pride made him know that he could not continue like this. Next time I must teach her a lesson. Only then will I be able to enforce my authority as a husband. Han Xingzhou continued. Now that the Manchurian Qing is being pressured by the Mongols on the outside and the three border defenses on the inside, and Shandong is occupied by the Golden Snake Camp, they're already on the verge of death. Lord Li, it is better for you to make plans early. Li Keqiu looked hesitant. After a long time, she seemed to have made a great decision. Okay, I can pledge allegiance to the Song Empire. But before my family is safely rescued, I will not openly change my allegiance. I hope that Minister Han can understand. Han Xingzhou nodded. No problem. When I return to Linen, I will immediately arrange for people to rescue your family. But once they are safely rescued, Lord Li must immediately reveal your identity and draw a clear line between you and the Manchurian Qing. Okay, Li Keqiu also answered very straightforwardly. But during this period, I need the Song Empire to provide me with provisions and military expenses to show their sincerity. Now that the Golden Snake Camp has occupied Shandong, the water transportation has been cut off. We can no longer get supplies from the Qing court. Han Xingzhou narrowed his eyes. In the early years of the Southern Song Empire, various warlords received money and provisions from the imperial court, but they often did things that did not work. He did not know if Li Keqiu was taking the opportunity to cheat the imperial court of provisions and provisions. After all, the Jianghuai area had always been rich. He did not believe that Li Keqiu had really reached the point of a food shortage. Now that the imperial court had been fighting for years, they needed money and provisions everywhere. Li Keqiu had 100,000 troops and horses under his command. The provisions and military expenses of this army were by no means a small amount. The imperial court was afraid that it would be a little difficult to provide for them. But now, the urgent task was to win Li Keqiu over. After he changed his allegiance and had no way out, the imperial court had ways to slowly deal with him. Han Xingzhou quickly had an idea. The matter of provisions and provisions is absolutely not a problem. After I go back and report, I can prepare for this matter. But this amount of provisions and provisions is not a small amount. When the time comes, the three departments of the imperial court and the censorate will definitely raise questions. In order to reduce as much resistance as possible, I need Lord Li to express his intentions. That way, I can also speak for Lord in the imperial court. Li Keqiu sneered inwardly. This was a proof of allegiance, but this was already within his expectations. He asked unhurriedly, I wonder how I should express my intentions. Han Xingzhou smiled faintly. He got up and paced back and forth. Because His Majesty does not have many children, the Empress Dowager has issued a decree this year to expand the number of concubines in the palace. As officials, we should also share the burden of the Empress Dowager. I heard that Lord Li has a daughter who is 16 years old. She is as beautiful as a flower. This is a great opportunity. Li Kushio's expression changed. He knew that this was the so-called proof of allegiance. His daughter had entered the palace to become the emperor's concubine. Naturally, she was tied to the Southern Song Empire's chariot. They did not have to worry that he would have other thoughts. But that girl, Yuanji, had long been raised by him to be lawless. She might not agree to this marriage. Song Qing-shu, who was on the roof, was very depressed. He thought, why'd a eunuch like Zhao go have so many wives? Was he going to marry them and put them in the palace as decorations? It was fine that he did not know about Aku's matter, but now he wanted to have designs on the Yuanji? Humph, if I don't ruin this deal, how can I be worthy of the friendship between that girl and me? Seeing that Li Kushio was silent, Han Xingzhou continued. Lord Li should know that during the Jingkong disaster, our country's second sage, Beishu, was accompanied by the current emperor's first wife, Lady Xing. In order to commemorate her, His Majesty did not have another empress after ascending the throne. It was only a few years ago that he heard that Empress Xing had died in the Jin Kingdom. Coupled with the persuasion of the Empress Dowager and the other officials, His Majesty finally had the intention of having a new empress. He decided to choose a suitable person from among the concubines to be the new empress. Lord Li's daughter is both beautiful and talented. Coupled with her extraordinary family background, her chances of being chosen are very high. This is a heaven-sent opportunity. Lord Li should not miss it. These words made Li Kushio's heart waver. If her daughter became the empress of the Southern Song dynasty, then she would become the father-in-law of the country. In the future, her position in the Southern Song dynasty would naturally be extraordinary, and the problems that she had been worried about after surrendering would also be easily solved. After all, Li Kushio was the ruler of a region. It was impossible for her to be so easily swayed by this big piece of cake. She quickly realized that she was not the only one eyeing the throne of the empress. Putting aside the daughters of the rich and powerful families of the Southern Song dynasty, even Wu Sangui's daughter was rumored to be a celestial being. In addition, Wu Sangui's power was above hers. Yuanji might not be able to compete with her. However, this bait was too tempting. Even though Li Kushio knew that it would not be so easy, she was still moved. This is not a bad idea. However, this matter is of great importance. I need to go back and think about it. Chapter 1031. Li Kushio continued to exchange pleasantries with the Southern Song delegation and then stood up to leave. Song Qing-shu planned to stay here and see if he could get more information from the Southern Song delegation. After seeing Li Kushio off, Liu said to Han Kaizhou with a worried expression, "Prime Minister Han, after subduing Li Kushio, are we really going to attack the Manchurian Qing according to our agreement with Wu Sangui?" Song Qing-shu was startled. If the Southern Song really launched an expedition to the north, the Golden Snake Battalion in Shandong would be the first to bear the brunt. At that time, should he borrow the road or not? If he borrowed the road, the Manchurian Qing was his own industry. If he were to be attacked from both sides by Wu Sangui and the Southern Song, he was afraid that the Manchurian Qing would completely collapse. If he did not borrow the road, he would inevitably start a war with the Southern Song. After the fall of the Ming dynasty, the Southern Song dynasty was the only Han regime left in the world. Attacking the Northern Song dynasty represented political correctness. If the Golden Snake Camp interfered, they would be despised by the Han people in the world. Worried, Song Qing-shu perked up his ears and continued to listen. Han Kaizhou smiled and shook his head. "Minister Guan, you are too straightforward. We have no conflict of interest with the Manchurian Qing. Why should we help Wu Sangui? Instead of fighting with Wu Sangui after the fall of the Manchurian Qing, it is better to sit back and watch them suffer." Liu Yu frowned, "But this is a rare opportunity. If we miss it, it will be a pity. And now Wu Sangui's daughter is the emperor's favorite concubine. If we break the agreement, I am afraid it will be difficult to explain." Han Kaizhou walked to the window and looked at the moon outside. "Minister Guan, who do you think the enemy of the Song is?" "Of course, it is the Jin Kingdom," Liu Yu blurted out. Everyone in the Song remembered the incident of Jingkong because it was a great humiliation. "Even if we want to attack the Northern Song, our target is not the Qing Kingdom, but the Jin kingdom. Han Kaizhou's eyes flashed with a hint of fanaticism. When the second sage hunted in the north, many imperial concubines and princesses were kidnapped to the Jin kingdom. I always want to take revenge. I have been planning for this day for more than 10 years. God has blessed our great song. Now that the Mongols have been attracted by the Western countries, their main force is advancing westward. The Jin's ally, the Manchurian Qing, is busy because of Wu Sangui and the Golden Snake Camp. Now is the best time for us to attack the Jin and avenge our humiliation. In this way, Wu Sangui won't be able to say anything. After all, the Jin kingdom and the Manchurian Qing kingdom are brothers. Our northern expedition against the Jin kingdom has already helped Wu Sangui a lot. Hearing this, Song Qingshu was secretly shocked. This man was indeed far-sighted. As early as 10 years ago, he had sent his clansman, Han Qinya, to the Jin kingdom. It turned out that he had been waiting for this day. If Song Qingshu was still the same person in the future, he would definitely clap his hands in glee if he knew that the Southern Song dynasty was going to attack the Jin kingdom in the north. After all, the humiliation of Jinkong represented humiliation and anger to every Han Chinese. Unfortunately, he had spent a lot of effort to finally take control of the Jin kingdom. If the Southern Song dynasty attacked the Jin kingdom now, wouldn't all his previous efforts be in vain? Song Qingshu knew that the Mongols would rule the world in the end, so the enemies of the other countries should be the Mongols. Unfortunately, he could not say this out loud. The Song dynasty and the Jin kingdom had deep hatred that could not be resolved. Sure enough, before the previous one subsides, another rises. Song Qingshu could not help but sigh. He had been worried about how to destroy the cooperation between Li Kaxiu and the Southern Song dynasty. Now, there was another big trouble. After listening to Han Zhuozhou's words, Liu Yu bowed deeply to him and said, "Chancellor Han's painstaking efforts are truly admirable. I must thank you on behalf of the people who died under the Jin kingdom's cavalry." Han Kaizhou hurriedly reached out to help him up. "Minister Han, you don't have to do this. We are all on the same side. There is no need to be so polite." Ling Huchong, who had been silent on the side, also spoke. "Minister Han, you are asking for the lives of the people. You deserve this bow, but I have a question, and I don't know if I should say it." Han Kaizhou was saved by him and admired his kung fu and character very much. He smiled and said, "General Wu, please speak." Even Song Qingshu was curious. He quickly pricked up his ears to hear what Ling Huchong would say. Ling Huchong nodded. "As far as I know, since Yuwumu was unjustly killed, the pro-peace faction gained the upper hand in the Song dynasty, and the pro-war faction was severely suppressed. Finally, the traitor Qin Hui, the leader of the pro-peace faction, died. Ma Qifeng, Zhang Jun, and others were also removed. Later, Zhao Ruyu, a member of the royal family, came to power, but it was also the pro-peace faction that surrendered. Prime Minister Han had to work hard to oust Zhao Ruyu. He was about to enter the Secretariat, but Jia Sherdao and Shi Miyuan colluded with each other and made trouble. They forced Ma Qifeng and Zhang Jun back to the Secretariat to serve as the left and right ministers, while you could only be the deputy prime minister. Although Jia Sherdao and Shi Miyuan were the main culprits, without the emperor's approval, how could Ma Qifeng and Zhang Jun, who had killed Yuwumu, return to the central government? I'm afraid that Minister Han's advocacy of war is against the emperor's intention. I'm afraid that he will be in trouble in the future." Listening to Ling Huchong's analysis of the situation in the Southern Song court, Song Qingshu on the roof couldn't help but show a strange expression. It was true that a scholar who had been away for 3 days should be looked at with new eyes. Ling Huchong used to be an idler in Jianghu and had never cared about these political affairs. However, after suffering the humiliation of breaking off the engagement, he was now very eager to have a powerful force. Therefore, he subconsciously changed himself and took the initiative to learn relevant information. In addition, during this period of time, he had been with Han Yuezhou and was influenced by what he saw and heard, so his knowledge was greatly different from before. Han Yuezhou hurriedly stopped Ling Huchong's words. "Nephew Wu, You can say these words in front of me, but you must not mention them in the future when you return to Lenin. Criticizing the emperor behind his back is a crime of great disrespect. If you are convicted, even I can't protect you. Thank you for the reminder, Minister Han. Ling Hucheng said so, but in his heart, he didn't take it seriously. As long as he could remember, the Central Plains had fallen. In addition, the Huashan sect was in the territory of the Jin Kingdom. In daily life, he was influenced by what he saw and heard, and he greatly disapproved of the useless emperor of the Southern Song dynasty. Therefore, it was inevitable that his words were a little impolite. Han Yuezhou sighed and said, "The emperor was deceived by vile people years ago, and that was why he sought peace with the Jin Kingdom. In recent years, I heard that the emperor regretted it. In addition, now the people's call for a northern expedition is growing day by day. As the saying goes, the general trend is irresistible, and it is impossible for those who advocate peace to stop it." Song Qingshu listened for a while longer. Seeing that there was no more information, he put the tiles back and quietly left. At this time, in the Jia mansion in Gelying and Lin and City, thousands of miles away, Jia Sherdao put the teacup in his hand on the table heavily. Humph, they're indeed unreliable. They promised that Han Jiefu would never make it to Yangzhou alive, but now he is alive and well in Yangzhou. Liao Yingzhong, the chief advisor next to him, said with a wry smile, "The young lord has many masters under his command." The people he sent this time had fully calculated the strength of the guards accompanying Han Jiefu. He thought it was foolproof, but who knew that General Wu Tianda from Xuanzhou would appear out of nowhere? Humph! Even a lion knows to try its best to catch a rabbit. Who told him not to have a backup plan? Jia Sherdao snorted coldly. "Have you found out the background of that Wu Tianda?" "Yes, he is from the Wu family," Liao Yingzhong said with a serious face. "Which Wu family?" Jia Sherdao immediately sat up straight. "What other Wu family?" "The long-gone Wu family, of course," Liao Yingzhong said with a wry smile. "The descendant of the Wu brothers?" Jia Sherdao's fingers tapped on the armchair in annoyance. "Is he from Wu Jie's line or Wu Qiong's line?" "From Prince Xian's Wu Lin's line. He should be Prince Xian's grandson," Liao Yingzhong answered. Jia Sherdao said as if he was talking to himself. "Although the Wu brothers are dead, the Wu family is deeply rooted in the army, and we can't underestimate them. If the Wu family is really on Han Jiefu's side, things will be troublesome." The Wu brothers he mentioned were the founding generals of the Southern Song dynasty, Wu Jie and Wu Lin. When the Northern Song dynasty fell, the cavalry of the Jin Kingdom was unstoppable, and the army of the Song dynasty almost collapsed at the first touch. It was not until Han Shizhong trapped the Golden Crow technique in the Yellow Heavens that they had their first battle record that they could barely see. However, the Battle of the Yellow Heavens was a battle on the water, so the Jin Kingdom's cavalry was unable to make full use of their advantages. Moreover, although the process was difficult, the Golden Crow technique turned defeat into victory in the end and wiped out all of Han Shizhong's troops. If this battle could be regarded as a victory, it would be a little difficult. Later, when the Jin army attacked the Chuanshan region where the Wu brothers were stationed, the Jin army suffered a crushing defeat at the Battle of Xingyuan. This was the first real victory for the Southern Song dynasty. It was also the first time the Jin suffered a crushing defeat since Aguda defeated the Liao dynasty and the Song dynasty. Jin Wushu had personally led 100,000 elite soldiers, but they had still been beaten to a pulp. From then on, he was unwilling to step into the Wu brothers' territory again, and the Wu brothers' reputation spread throughout the world. From then on, the Wu family became the western barrier of the Southern Song dynasty and could even be called the true master of the Sichuan region. It was a pity that the Wu brothers died one after another. To prevent Sichuan from becoming a country within a country, the imperial court no longer appointed the descendants of the Wu family to guard Sichuan. Then, the Mongols rose and took the opportunity to conquer Sichuan, which had previously been impregnable. In recent years, the Mongols changed their strategy of making enemies everywhere, so that it would be convenient for them to concentrate on conquering the West. Then, They returned Sichuan to the Southern Song dynasty and made a truce. Note: in history, Sichuan was taken back by the Southern Song dynasty General Meng Liang. This is just an artistic treatment to fit the world of the novel. Please don't take it seriously. Although the Wu family was no longer the king of Sichuan, their disciples and former officials were everywhere in the army, so their influence in the army could not be underestimated. Hearing that they might have formed an alliance with Han Xingzhou, Jia Shidao had to be careful. As if he had made a very important decision, Jia Shidao suddenly stood up and said, "No, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. We can't let Han Jiefu return to Lin alive." Liao Yingzhong hurriedly said, "The young lord has sent more people there. This time, he has sent all the masters under his command. Han Jiefu will definitely die." Chapter 1032. Hearing Jia Shidao's words, Liao Yingzhong's heart skipped a beat. He hurriedly asked, "Master, are you going to use the power of the Isle of Heroes?" "No." Jia Shidao shook his head. "The Isle of Heroes is my biggest plan. I can't let it be exposed so easily." Liao Yingzhong smiled bitterly. "If we don't use the power of the Isle of Heroes, the masters we can use may not be as strong as the young princes. After all, we can't use our power openly, and there aren't many masters in Jianghu who can beat the White Lotus Society." Jia Shidao snorted disdainfully and said, "The White Lotus cult has always been the target of the imperial court. Zhao Bojiu is a king, but he befriended such gangsters. Humph, it seems that he's willing to do anything for that position." Liao Yingzhong smiled and said, "The current emperor has no sons, so he adopted 2 from the royal family. Everyone can see that the future emperor will be one of them. However, all the signs from the palace these years indicate that Zhao Bokong has a higher chance. Plus, Han Xingzhou and Zhao Bokong are good friends, so it's no wonder that the young prince has to use some tricks. Is it useful? The White Lotus Society can't help the imperial court at all. Now, they can't even handle the fighting in Jianghu." Obviously, Jia Shidao didn't approve of the young prince's actions. Liao Yingzhong answered, "Although the White Lotus Society is useless, at least they have one advantage. They can take the blame after the deed is done. After all, the assassination of the prime minister is unprecedented. After this matter, the imperial court will definitely investigate this matter thoroughly, and the severity will be unprecedentedly strict. Thus, I suggest that the Lord should just wait and see. If you get involved, you might bring trouble upon yourself." Jia Shidao shook his head. "I thought so too, so I'll let Zhao Boji do it. However, it turns out that his men are not reliable, and I don't want Han Xingzhou to come back alive, so I have to do it myself." But Liao Yingzhong wanted to say something, but Jia Shidao waved his hand to stop him. "I know what you're worried about. Don't worry, I'm not that stupid. Even Zhao Boji knows how to kill with a borrowed knife. So do I." Jia Shidao stroked his mustache as if he had a card up his sleeve. "May I know whose saber does my lord intend to borrow?" Liao Yingzhong hurriedly asked. Jia Shidao smiled and said, "Didn't Zhang San and Li Si from the Isle of Heroes report that they ran into a weird young man called Son of AB *TCH? Untouchables will always be untouchables. Look at what kind of lousy name they have. If it wasn't for the fact that his name is so unique, I don't think my lord would have remembered such a person." Liao Yingzhong casually added a few sentences, and then said, "That young man seems to be called Shi Patian. His internal energy is astonishing. Even Zhang San and Li Si are far inferior to him. Fortunately, he seems to be a bit silly, so Zhang San and Li Si can take the opportunity to become brothers with him, turning enemies into friends." As Jia Shidao's advisor, what he did the most was help him collect a large amount of information. Therefore, he had a very good memory, and it only took him a moment to tell Jia Shidao about that person. Jia Shidao nodded and said yes. "The reason why I have an impression of this person is not only because his name is too fresh and refined, but also because he is from the Song Mountain sect." Liao Yingzhong's heart skipped a beat. As Jia Shidao's chief advisor, he was definitely not stupid. He quickly grasped Jia Shidao's thoughts and said, Could it be that my lord wants to borrow the saber from the Song Mountain sect? Yes. I've looked up the information about the Song Mountain sect. This Walinchan is cruel and farsighted. If he wasn't limited by Jianghu, he would definitely be a first-class talent. If Walinchan knew that Jia Sherdao thought so highly of him, he would probably be very pleased. The Song Mountain sect is very powerful, and he has made friends with many evil masters. He is a suitable saber, Liao Yingzhong said in confusion, but Zhuo Linchan is not a fool. Why would he agree to kill Han Xingzhou? Jia Sherdao patted him on the shoulder and said, Yingzhong, this is why you are an excellent advisor, but not a qualified leader. I will only make Zhuo Linchan work for me unknowingly. Why would I tell him to kill Han Xingzhou? I am stupid. Please enlighten me, my lord. Liao Yingzhong bowed respectfully. Jia Sherdao smiled and said, What do you think Zhuo Linchan wants most recently? The BCS swordplay. Liao Yingzhong blurted out. He always paid attention to Jianghu. He knew that the 5 mountain sword sects had gone to Fuzhou to get the BCS swordplay, but none of them had succeeded. But we don't have the BCS swordplay manual with us. Come to think of it, it's strange. The Isle of Heroes Information Network found that the manual might be hidden in the temple hall of the Lin family's old house in Sunward Alley. However, when our people went to investigate, they only found traces of something hidden on the beam. It's obvious that the BCS swordplay manual has been found by someone else. We don't know who has it now. Liao Yingzhong was confused. Although we don't have it, we can mislead Zhuo Linchan and make him think that someone has it. Jia Sherdao smiled slyly. Who? Liao Yingzhong raised his eyebrows and asked hurriedly. Wu Tianda. Jia Sherdao said word by word. Liao Yingzhong clapped his hands and said, Wonderful. Wu Tianda's kung fu was mediocre when he was in office, but he suddenly became so powerful and skilled in swordsmanship. Plus, he used to be the general of Chuanzhou, and he would definitely pass by Fuzhou on his way back to the capital. It makes perfect sense that he has the BCS swordplay. Wait, does he really have the BCS swordplay? Jia Sherdao shook his head and said, It's just the BCS swordplay. It's not worth the effort, no matter who has it. In any case, as long as Zhuo Linchan believes that Wu Tianda has the BCS sword manual, he will definitely gather all the experts to snatch it. Given Zhuo Linchan's ruthless character, he will definitely kill everyone involved in order to keep this matter secret. Han Xingzhou will also become a fish in the pond. My lord, it's a brilliant move. If I hadn't been told in advance, I wouldn't have been able to guess that Han Xingzhou was the real target. Liao Yingzhong flattered him again, making Jia Sherdao feel very comfortable. But how do we get the news to Zhuo Linchan without him suspecting us, and without the imperial court being able to trace it back to us? Liao Yingzhong suddenly realized a key problem. It's up to that son of a bitch. Jia Sherdao stroked his mustache and said slowly, Let Bei Haishur, the leader of the Zhongli gang, invite that son of a bitch back to be the leader in the name of dealing with the 2 messengers. Since he's from the Song Mountain sect, Zhuo Linchan will definitely investigate it. Zhuo Linchan is very ambitious. With such a good opportunity, he will definitely hide behind that son of a bitch and take control of the Zhongli gang. Then, the spies of the Zhongli gang will tell that son of a bitch that the nominal leader has found the whereabouts of the BCS swordplay, and Zhuo Linchan will naturally know. Liao Yingzhong suddenly understood. Then, no matter how smart that old fox Zhuo Linchan is, he will only think that he intercepted the news himself. He won't know that we deliberately let him know. And no matter how the imperial court investigates, they won't be able to trace it back to us. No matter how cunning a fox is, how can he beat a hunter? Jia Sherdao smiled meaningfully. At that moment, Song Qingshu didn't know about the conspiracy that was happening far away in Linen. After coming down from the roof of Han Xingzhou's house, he chose to climb over the back wall of the Jade Pure Temple near the river in order to not be discovered by the surrounding guards. After he came out, he simply walked along the river, thinking about how to deal with the current situation. Chapter 1033. The woman had a pink face and rosy cheeks. Although she was dressed like a young married woman, her every movement was as shy as a young girl. It was Miss Chung who had just been released from the yamen. It turned out that when Song Qing-shu brought the Qing troops to search the pure Jade Monastery, Lu Guanying recognized him. When he returned home, he fiercely scolded his wife. After all, in his opinion, the Gene Dog official had just released them, and now he came looking for them. Only a few people knew that Han Zhou and the others were hiding in the pure Jade Monastery. How could there be such a coincidence in the world? He was already brooding over his wife's loss of chastity. However, considering that his wife was usually gentle, in addition to the fact that she was not resistant this time, he suppressed his anger. It wasn't until that night that Lu Guanying finally exploded. In his opinion, his wife's loss of chastity was not completely unforgivable, but she should not have hidden it from him. Moreover, she should not have told the hiding place of the Southern Song emissaries to the Jin people. He even suspected that his wife had some feelings for the Jin people. Otherwise, why would she tell them such a secret? Miss Chung naturally felt wronged and denied it. However, the more she denied it, the more her husband became suspicious and the angrier he became. In the end, he even slapped her. Miss Chung had been the pearl of the family since she was a child. In addition, she had a shy and gentle temperament. Even after they got married, she had never gotten angry with her husband. But this time, she was slapped in the face. Feeling wronged and angry, Miss Chung cried and ran out of the pure Jade Monastery. Lu Guanying was angry, so he didn't chase after her. She ran farther and farther away, and the more she ran, the sadder she became. Finally, she stopped under a tree by the river and wept. Song Qing-shu saw her crying like a pear blossom in the rain. His heart was filled with pity. He was about to go over and comfort her when he suddenly noticed something and had to stop. In the past, when they told me that Jiangnan was good, I didn't believe them. But after coming to Yangzhou, not only is the water sweet, even the women are so pitiful. Not far away, a group of people passed by. When the leader of the group saw Miss Cheng's appearance, his eyes lit up, and he hurriedly walked over to her. Song Qing-shu looked over and saw that the leader was dressed nondescript. He was dressed like a young master, but his clothes and accessories were slightly rough. He was definitely not a young master of a Han family. At the same time, his dressing style was very different from the tribes of the grasslands. After all, Song Qing-shu had seen a lot of nomads during this period of time. Looking at those people's attire, there was only one thought left in Song Qing-shu's mind. Right now, Yangzhou City was like a storm. All kinds of powers were coming here to fish in troubled waters. Looking at their attire, they were most likely big bandits from some place. When Cheng Yaojia sensed so many people surrounding her, she panicked. She quickly stood up and wiped the tears on her cheeks. She looked at the people in front of her with a red face and asked, "Who are you people? Who are you?" "Of course, we are men." The leader of the group whistled. His tone was frivolous. Miss Cheng's face turned red. She quickly turned around and wanted to leave, but she was immediately stopped by the young master. "Little wife, why are you crying in the middle of the night? What grievances have you suffered? Tell Big Brother, and Big Brother will help you." Although Miss Chung was shy, she was still a disciple of Chongyang Palace. Seeing that the other side was deliberately teasing her, her face turned cold. "Get out of the way. Oh, little wife is quite fierce. Big Brother doesn't want little wife to get out of the way. What can you do?" The young master said as he stretched out his hand to hook her chin. Miss Cheng's expression suddenly changed. She unsheathed her sword and thrust it toward him. But she was kind-hearted and deliberately avoided the other side's vital parts. She only wanted to make him retreat and didn't want to hurt him. The young master's figure flashed, and he easily dodged her sword. Then he stretched out his hand to touch her face. Miss Chung came from a famous family. Although her martial arts were not high, her foundation was very solid. She quickly moved her head to the side and avoided the other side's hand. Seeing that there was nothing there, the young man was a little surprised. "It seems that little lady is reluctant to let me touch your delicate face. However, I have a strange temper. The more you don't want me to touch you, the more I want to touch you." After saying that, he stretched out his hand to attack. He didn't touch anywhere else, but only her face. Miss Chung was angry and anxious. She hastily brandished her sword to protect herself. One of them used dirty moves while the other dodged all around. After a dozen moves, Miss Cheng's footsteps became messy. Song Qingshu frowned. Miss Cheng was definitely not this young master's match. He was about to help when something strange happened. Where did this bastard come from? It's broad daylight, and you dare to molest a woman. Not far away, an old man jumped out and shouted at the young master. The young master was stunned. He subconsciously looked up at the sky and saw a full moon hanging in the dark sky. He couldn't help but fly into a rage. Where did this old bastard come from? Are you blind? The old man's face turned red. He had never done this kind of hero saving a beauty before. It was his first time doing it, so it was inevitable that he was a bit out of practice. He blurted out the slogans that other people used to shout. In order to dissolve the embarrassment in his heart, he hastily pointed and said, "Hey, let this young lady go, and this old man can spare your lives." In the distance, Song Qingshu had a strange expression on his face. He felt that things were getting more and more interesting. He was not in a hurry to go over. Instead, he crossed his arms and leaned against a tree. He wanted to see how things would develop next. Wei Xiaobao also knew this old man. Speaking of which, he was an acquaintance. He was Lu Zhanke, one of the two lackeys of the Riyang Palace, Xianming, two elders. I didn't expect this. I didn't expect this perverted deer to come out and save the beauty. Song Qingshu laughed inwardly as he watched. When they heard Lu Zhanke's words, the young master's subordinates cursed, "Stinky old man. Do you know who our young master is? How dare you speak so arrogantly? Who is he?" Lu Zhanke was startled and felt a little guilty. He served in the Riyang Palace and had a deep understanding of how powerful the government was. If the other party was really the son of a high official or noble, he would have to think twice. "Our young master is the young general of the Dabi Mountains Loyal Army, Zhang." The minion wanted to continue, but was slapped by the young master. "Shut up, useless thing. Didn't I say that we can't reveal our identities on this trip?" "Young general, I deserve to die. I deserve to die." The subordinate hurriedly admitted his mistake. Lu Zhanke was stunned at first, but then he burst out laughing. "What bullish asterisk T Loyal Army? Aren't they just a group of murderous bandits from Dabi Mountain?" He had been living in the Riyang Palace for a long time, so he was imperceptibly influenced by what he had seen and heard. His knowledge was not something that ordinary Jianghu people could compare with. Song Qingshu nodded to himself. He had also heard of the Loyal Army. When the Jin and Qing dynasties rose to power, they were unable to effectively digest many of their territories due to their rapid advancement. This led to the uprising of many volunteer armies in the Central Plains. The Southern Song Imperial Court was happy to see this happen, and they were eager for these volunteer armies to cause more trouble for the Jin and Qing dynasties. Therefore, they made some of the Song officials in the hands of the volunteer armies. After all, it was just an empty promise, so the Southern Song Imperial Court did not feel bad about it. The leaders of the volunteer armies were legalized, and both sides got what they wanted. However, as the Jin and Qing dynasties stabilized, these volunteer armies were eliminated one after another. In the end, there were only 3 relatively famous groups left. One was the Golden Snake Camp in Shandong, the second was the Redcoat Army in Hunan, and the third was the Loyal Army in Dabi Mountain. Among these 3 volunteer armies, the Golden Snake Camp was the most powerful, followed by the Redcoat Army, and the Loyal Army was the weakest. However, they were still a force that could not be underestimated. When the young general heard Lu Zhanke's words, he could not help but fly into a rage. He waved his hand and ordered, "Kill him." Yes. One by one, his followers unsheathed their long sabers. It could be seen that they were all very brave people. Unfortunately, they were not fighting on the battlefield, and they had run into a top expert, Lu Zhanke. Lu Zhanke's figure shuttled back and forth among the crowd. Very soon, the crowd was filled with screams. The young general had only exchanged one blow with Lu Zhanke when he felt a bone-chilling cold jinchi rush into his body. He was so scared that he quickly jumped out of the battle circle. He knew that the old man's martial arts were far above his own. Seeing his men die one by one, he immediately understood that if he delayed any longer, he would probably die here tonight. He did not dare to stay any longer and quickly ran away. Perhaps he realized that his behavior was not very honorable. He shouted and cursed, "Damn old man, if you have the guts, leave your name. We, the loyal army, will settle this account with you in the future." Lu Zhanke was furious. He killed the last soldier next to him with a palm strike. "I, your grandfather, will never change my name. I am Lu Zhanke." He originally wanted to chase after him and kill him, but he saw Cheng Yaojia, who was standing to the side. He immediately stopped. After all, how could that stinky man be more attractive than this beautiful young lady? "Miss, are you all right?" As soon as he finished speaking, Lu Zhanke noticed the bun on her head. He could not help but feel a bit disappointed. She was already married, but he quickly became happy again. So what if she was married? This young lady was so beautiful. She was not the least bit inferior to the prince's favorite concubine, Concubine Han. When he thought of Concubine Han, he hated the people of the Ming dynasty. "I'm all right. Thank you, Senior, for saving me." Cheng Yaojia bowed gracefully. Her voice was full of gratitude. Lu Zhanke quickly stretched out his hand to help her up. "Miss, where are you? Why are you outside alone in the middle of the night?" Seeing him holding her hand without letting go, Cheng Yaojia blushed and quickly withdrew her hand. Although she felt it was strange, she did not think too much about it. Although the man in front of her did not have the air of an immortal, he was older than her father. Song Qing-shu, who was not far away, secretly sneered. "I want to see what kind of trick this disrespectful old man is playing." He knew that this was not a good time to step forward. In Cheng Yaojia's heart, he was probably the scarier one. Even if he told her that Lu Zhanke was a perverted thief, she most likely would not believe him. Chapter 1034. A thought appeared in Lu Zhanke's head, and he forced a smile that looked even uglier than a crying face. Yangzhou City has not been safe for the time being. Besides, it's already the middle of the night. It's better for me to help her to the end and escort her back. "No need. Thank you for your kindness, Senior." Miss Cheng shook her head slightly. She was actually quite tempted, but she knew that Han Zhozhou's hiding place was very important and could not be known by outsiders. She could only refuse with an apologetic expression. At this time, Miss Cheng was thinking that although this senior's appearance was a bit fierce, he was a very good person. Lu Zhanke became a bit impatient when he saw that she had refused him again and again. He was not a modest gentleman. The reason he had acted sanctimonious before was only on a whim. Now, he was gradually losing his patience. Seeing that she was about to leave, Lu Zhanke stopped her and asked, "Miss, I just saved you. How are you going to thank me?" Miss Cheng was shocked. She hurriedly took off a green bracelet from her hand and handed it to him. "I was worried that mentioning a reward would be too offensive to Senior. So, this is a good Buddha's hand jadeite. Although it's not priceless, it's worth a lot of money. I hope Senior doesn't mind." Lu Zhanke shook his head and did not take it. He looked at the snow-white wrist in her sleeve and could not help but swallow. "I'm not interested in gold, silver, or jewelry." A woman's natural sensitivity made Miss Cheng realize something. However, when she saw his age, she could not think in that direction. She could only sweetly ask, "May I know what Senior is interested in? I can't repay Senior for saving my life. If I have something, I will definitely give it to you with both hands." "Really?" Lu Zhanke felt his whole body heat up. Miss Cheng pursed her lips and nodded with a smile. "May I know what Senior likes?" Lu Zhanke chuckled. "Little beauty, what if I say I like you?" Miss Cheng's beautiful face immediately turned pale and her whole body trembled with anger. Shameless. Not far away, Song Qingshu secretly shook his head. He had thought that Lu Zhanke had changed his character, but in the end, he was still useless. His table manners were too unsightly. Miss Cheng was just about to run when she felt her waist go numb. Her body involuntarily fell to the ground. Lu Zhanke hastily reached out and picked her up. He took a deep breath as if he was intoxicated by the smell. "Ah, you smell so good, and your body is so soft." Let me go. Cheng Yaojia was so anxious that she was about to cry. She thought to herself, why am I so unlucky these past 2 days? First, I was captured by the Jin Kingdom's marshal. Then, I ran into the loyal army's hooligans. Now, I fell into the hands of this old pervert. Comparing the two, the Jin Kingdom's marshal was like an angel. Cheng Yaojia didn't know why she suddenly thought of the Jin Kingdom's marshal. Wasn't it because of him that we didn't get along and everything that happened after I ran away? However, she quickly dispelled that thought. After all, he was a gentleman and had never been rude to her, except in the carriage. In the end, it was because my husband didn't trust me that I ran away in the middle of the night and fell into the hands of this old pervert. Soon, a glimmer of hope rose in Cheng Yaojia's heart. Seeing that she hadn't returned for so long, her husband would come back to find her. However, when she thought of the martial arts Lu Zhanke had displayed just now, Cheng Yaojia immediately felt discouraged. This man's martial arts were so high that even if her husband came, it would be useless. If she had known earlier, she would have lost her virginity to the Jin Kingdom's marshal from the very beginning. Then, she wouldn't have been wronged by her husband and couldn't keep her innocence in that split second. Cheng Yaojia's mind was filled with countless thoughts. Lu Zhanke saw the beautiful eyebrows of the young woman in his arms frown and then relax. He felt as if all the bones in his body were about to go limp. "Little lady, let me kiss you." Cheng Yaojia was so frightened that she screamed. Song Qingshu was furious. He was about to make a move when he saw Lu Zhanke suddenly stop. He said to himself, "This won't do. Maybe that guy will come back with his men. Although I'm not afraid of him, I don't have the mood to fight with him now that I have a beauty in my arms. I'd better take the little lady back to He Garden and slowly enjoy her." After saying that, he sealed Cheng Yaojia's mute acupoint. His body flashed, and he used his lightness skill to run away. He Garden? Song Qingshu appeared from behind a big tree. He had originally planned to save Cheng Yaojia, but when he heard that Lu Zhanke wanted to go back to He Garden, he gave up on the idea. According to Jiao Wan Er's information, the Mongolian emissary lived in a salt merchant with the surname He. Now that Lu Zhanke wanted to go back to He Garden, he could use this opportunity to sneak in and see who the Mongolian emissary was. He didn't know if it was Zhao Min. Zhao Min's bright and beautiful smile appeared in his mind. Song Qingshu's heart warmed, and he quietly followed behind Lu Zhanke. Lu Zhanke's lightness skill was far inferior to Song Qingshu's, not to mention that he was carrying a person in his arms. Song Qingshu almost effortlessly caught up to him. Seeing Lu Zhanke sneak into the He Mansion's back door, Song Qingshu also sneaked in without anyone noticing. Carrying Cheng Yaojia back to his room, Lu Zhanke kicked the door open and anxiously ran toward his bed. Song Qingshu seized the opportunity when Lu Zhanke's door was not closed to slip into the room noiselessly. With a tap of his toes, he hit on the beam. The whole process was as smooth as floating clouds and flowing water. Even a martial art master like Lu Zhanke was not aware of it. After putting Cheng Yaojia on the bed, Lu Zhanke hurriedly ran back to close the door. Before closing it, he poked his head out to look around. Seeing that no one was paying attention to him, he rubbed his hands and walked toward the bed. In a very lewd and obscene tone, he said, "Little beauty, I'm coming." On the beam, Song Qingshu secretly shook his head. This was really a case of a wolf traveling 1,000 li to eat meat and a dog traveling 1,000 li to eat shit. This lewd deer was really not presentable. "Don't come over," Cheng Yaojia shouted in her heart. Unfortunately, in order to prevent her from shouting, Lu Zhanke had sealed her mute acupoint. Seeing the young woman's chest rise and fall rapidly because of her nervousness, Lu Zhanke could not hold himself back anymore. He stretched out his hand to unbutton her lapel. Song Qingshu knew that he could not continue to watch the show. He was about to help her when suddenly there was a knock on the door. Mr. Lu? Song Qingshu frowned. He put down his hand and calmly waited to see what would happen. Having been disturbed, Lu Zhanke could not help but scold. "Why are you crying like ghosts and howling like wolves in the middle of the night? Believe it or not, I will twist your head off." "Mr. Lu, "The master has ordered you to come over immediately." The person outside replied emotionlessly. "What?" Lu Zhanka was startled, but he did not dare to disobey the order. He had no choice but to put down the mosquito net and tightly cover Cheng Yaojia. Chapter 1035. Miss Cheng had escaped a calamity, but she was not happy at all. When she thought about how she would not be able to escape when the other party returned, 2 lines of tears involuntarily flowed down her cheeks. What happened to make Madame so sad? A familiar yet strange voice suddenly entered her ears. Miss Cheng opened her eyes wide and looked to the side with a perplexed expression. What she saw was a familiar face. Several hours ago, she thought that this face was the most frightening face in the world. But now that she saw him again, she could not help but feel a sense of joy. Song Qing-shu hung up the curtain again and looked at the beauty lying on the bed. He could not help but tease her. "Madam, are you happy to see me?" Miss Cheng's face turned red, but her eyes were pleading. Song Qing-shu suddenly realized, "I almost forgot that your acupoints were sealed." Then he unsealed her acupoints and helped her up. "Thank you." After her acupoints had been sealed for so long, Miss Cheng's whole body was still sore and numb. She could only sit on the bed and rest for a while. Song Qing-shu smiled and said, "Madam is too polite." The 2 of them were in the dark room, and they were very close. Song Qing-shu could even smell the faint fragrance of a woman coming from Miss Cheng's body. Miss Cheng did not know what to think, but her expression suddenly changed. She looked at him with some panic. "You? Why are you here?" Song Qing-shu was startled and could not help but smile. "What? Don't you want me to be here? Then I'm leaving. Don't regret it when that perverted deer returns." "No." Seeing that he was really going to leave, Miss Cheng cried out in alarm and subconsciously pulled on Song Qing-shu's sleeve. The old man was really scary. She did not know why, but she felt that the bearded man in front of her was much more adorable. Song Qing-shu's eyes fell on her hand that was pulling his sleeve. He said with a faint smile, "Men and women should not touch each other. How long does Madame plan to pull me?" Hearing his words, Miss Cheng's hand retracted as if she had been electrocuted. She thought, "When you touched me in the carriage, why didn't you mention that men and women should not touch each other?" But how could she say such a thing? That old man really isn't your subordinate?" Cheng Yaojia stammered. She was too embarrassed to say the words, "old pervert." "Of course not." Song Qing-shu came to a sudden realization. He moved closer to her and asked, "So you thought I sent someone to capture you?" The 2 of them were so close that Cheng Yaojia could even feel the heat of each other's breath. She panicked and hurriedly sat down. She didn't relax until she was at a safe distance. Song Qing-shu also climbed onto the bed and sat beside her. "Madam, this hurts my heart. I came to save you out of goodwill, but you suspect me like this." Sigh. His acting skills had already been perfected. The tone of his words matched with his expression perfectly portrayed the image of a heartbroken man. Cheng Yaojia felt quite embarrassed. "Sorry, I was just too scared. Also, can you not sit so close to me?" Song Qing-shu pretended not to hear her words. Instead, he asked, "How did you fall into the hands of that perverted deer?" He naturally knew the whole process. However, if he told her that he had been standing by and watching, it would really affect his image. "I was by the river." Cheng Yaojia didn't worry about him. She softly told him what had happened. Although she was still in a state of shock and what she told him was a nightmare, her voice was still very sweet and pleasant to listen to. It made people feel as if all the pores on their body had opened up. Why was Madame alone by the river in the middle of the night? This was what Song Qing-shu was most concerned about. After all, Cheng Yaojia's position at that time was quite a distance from the Pure Jade Monastery. Cheng Yaojia wanted to say something, but hesitated. A blush appeared on her face. How could she tell an outsider about a quarrel between husband and wife? Not to mention that the main culprit was him. Noticing her expression, Song Qing-shu chuckled and said, "Did you quarrel?" Cheng Yaojia hesitated for a moment and then grunted. Song Qing-shu curiously said, "That's strange. Isn't the relationship between you husband and wife very good? When you were at my place, you risked your life to save him. You treated him with such deep affection. Why did you quarrel? Cheng Yaojia was already feeling wronged. After hearing what he said, she couldn't bear it anymore. She hugged her knees and cried. Song Qingshu sighed and said, "You have such a weak temperament, yet you quarreled. Needless to say, your husband must have bullied you." Cheng Yaojia cried even more miserably. Song Qingshu hastily handed her a handkerchief and said, "Don't cry. I can't stand seeing a woman cry the most in my life." Cheng Yaojia saw his flustered appearance and couldn't help but feel warm in her heart. She softly said, "You are a bit different from the other golden men. Am I more handsome than the other golden men? Let me tell you a secret. I am a most handsome man in the Jin Kingdom." Song Qingshu proudly said. Cheng Yaojia finally couldn't help but laugh through her tears and said, "You are really shameless. Look at your appearance." She was kind-hearted and worried that she would hurt his self-esteem. She stopped talking. Song Qingshu snorted and said, "The Jin Kingdom is not the same as your southern Song dynasty. Our beauty is majestic and imposing. Look at my beard. It's like iron slag. It's the strongest expression of masculinity. It's not like your southern Song dynasty, where pretty boys are popular." Cheng Yaojia believed him. She thought that it was no wonder the Jin Kingdom's military was so strong. It turned out that the whole country admired majestic and imposing men. Stealthily glanced at Song Qingshu's beard, Cheng Yaojia secretly shook her head. She thought that it was very difficult for her to accept their aesthetic standards. Whoever became his wife would really be pitiful. When they were intimate, her delicate skin would be pricked to death by his curly beard. Cheng Yaojia's face was burning hot. She hurriedly used her hand to cover her face. What was she thinking about? "Hey, wipe your tears and return the handkerchief to me." Song Qingshu stretched out his hand in front of her. Cheng Yaojia was very embarrassed and hurriedly returned the handkerchief to him. However, she quickly saw the pattern on the handkerchief. It was clearly a mandarin duck embroidered by her. She couldn't help but be shocked and said, "This handkerchief." Song Qingshu directly put it back in his bosom and said, "Yes, you gave it to me before. I always have it with me." Cheng Yaojia was incomparably angry. That was obviously the handkerchief she embroidered for her husband. "You snatched it from her at the yamen. How could it be a gift?" "I ruined the handkerchief. I'll wash it and return it to you." Cheng Yaojia knew that she would definitely not succeed if she asked him to take it back. She could only use a more tactful method. "Is that so?" Song Qingshu took out the handkerchief again. Cheng Yaojia was delighted to see this. She was about to reach out to take it when he put the handkerchief to the tip of his nose and gently sniffed it. He revealed an intoxicated expression and said, "A beauty's tears are more precious than pearls. How could I steal it?" What kind of person was Song Qingshu? How could he be deceived by her shallow trick? Seeing his frivolous action, Cheng Yaojia was embarrassed and anxious. She subconsciously reached out to snatch it back. Who knew that Song Qingshu would withdraw his hand? She grabbed empty air and lost her balance and fell into Song Qingshu's bosom. With a warm and fragrant body in his bosom, Song Qingshu laughed and said, "I didn't expect that madam would take the initiative to throw herself into my bosom. How could I let this kind of affection down?" As he said that, he reached out to hug her. Cheng Yaojia was like a frightened rabbit. She hastily sat up straight and said, "You misunderstood. I just couldn't sit properly, so don't think too much about it." "Is that so? That's a pity. Madam is as beautiful as a flower and as beautiful as the moon, but you can only look at it from afar and can't touch it. It seems that I don't have this kind of luck." Song Qingshu suddenly sighed. Hearing him praise her beauty, Cheng Yaojia's heart was filled with mixed feelings of shyness and secret joy. It was strange. The person in front of her had obviously molested her several times and had taken more advantage of her than Lu Zhanke. But in her heart, she didn't hate him at all. After thinking it over, she could only attribute it to the fact that although his words were frivolous, his behavior was appropriate. He wasn't like Lu Zhanke, who obviously wanted to take advantage of her body. However, The 3 obediences and 4 virtues in her bones made Cheng Yaojia sensitive to the fact that she couldn't continue to stay in such an ambiguous atmosphere with this man. She hastily changed the topic and said, "Speaking of which, the reason why I quarreled with Lu Lang this time was because of you." As soon as the words left her mouth, Cheng Yaojia wanted to slap herself. She clearly wanted to break this inexplicable atmosphere. But why did she lead the topic in an even more ambiguous direction? However, the words had already left her mouth, and it was too late to change it. Hearing this, Song Qing-shu was startled. Because of me? Because of what? Cheng Yaojia closed her mouth and blushed, refusing to say another word. Song Qing-shu smiled and said, "Actually, even if Madam doesn't want to say it, I can roughly guess 1 or 2 things. Any man would be suspicious if his wife spent the night with another man." Cheng Yaojia suddenly raised her head and said with a slightly angry face, "So you did it on purpose?" "That's not it." Song Qing-shu shook his finger. "I don't deny that I played a little trick, but if your husband really knew you, how could he not believe you? You and I both know that I really didn't do anything to you that night." Yes. Cheng Yaojia also knew that this matter couldn't be blamed on him. In fact, I also thought it was strange. I explained the twists and turns to him, but he just didn't believe me. I don't know why. The husband and wife had always respected each other and had a deep relationship. Cheng Yaojia thought that although the situation at that time was indeed very suspicious, she had clearly explained the whole story. Based on her understanding of her husband, the other party should be able to believe her. Song Qing-shu shrugged his shoulders and said with some schadenfreude, "Maybe your husband is too sensitive." He didn't expect that his little trick would cause the 2 of them to quarrel so much. He couldn't help but doubt Lu Guaniying's breadth of mind. Chapter 1036. All right, I've been here for too long. I almost forgot that I still have business to attend to. Song Qing-shu got up and said, "Madam, please rest here for a while. I'll come back to pick you up later." Miss Cheng hurriedly jumped out of bed and pulled his sleeve. "Don't leave me behind." She had a weak temperament and had been frightened again and again today. If it weren't for Song Qing-shu accompanying her, she would have already collapsed. Miss Cheng shuddered at the thought of Lu Zhangke's ugly and lecherous appearance. If she stayed here alone, what would she do if Lu Zhangke came back? Moreover, she didn't know where Lu Zhangke had taken her. Women were naturally timid, so she only wanted to stay with people she knew. Looking at her pitiful eyes, Song Qing-shu's heart softened. He was also worried that she would encounter danger if she stayed here. "All right, I'll take you with me. But you have to promise me that you won't make any noise. If you alarm the guards, it will be terrible." "Okay." Seeing that he was willing to take her with him, Miss Cheng hurriedly nodded. She was happy and secretly moved. Although he looked fierce on the outside, he was an extremely gentle man. Song Qing-shu smiled at her and raised his hands high. "Come, hold me." Miss Cheng was so scared that she took a step back. She blushed and said angrily, "How can I do that?" Song Qing-shu looked gloomy. "What are you thinking about? There are so many experts in this garden. If you don't carry me with your lightness skill, you'll be discovered by the guards within a few steps." Miss Cheng realized that she was thinking too much. However, it was still too difficult for her to take the initiative to hold a man other than her husband. She hesitantly said, "Can I not hold you?" "Sure, you can stay here and wait for me to come back and save you. However, Lu Zhangke will come back first. Don't regret it." Song Qing-shu shrugged his shoulders with an indifferent expression. Cheng Yaojia bit her lips lightly. She struggled in her heart. Even though hugging another man was too much for her, compared to being caught by Lu Zhangke again and losing her chastity, it was much easier to accept. After thinking it over and over again, Cheng Yaojia finally braced herself and walked over to Song Qing-shu. She saw his hands raised high and a complacent smile gradually blossoming on his lips. She gnashed her teeth in hatred, thinking that this man loved to tease her. Song Qing-shu smiled when he saw her walking over hesitantly, unable to make up her mind to hug him. He reached out to hold her waist and held her in his arms. "Ah!" Cheng Yaojia cried out in fright. "Shoo!" Song Qing-shu placed his finger on her lips and shook his head. Madam, have you forgotten what you promised me just now? Don't make a sound, lest you alert the guards. Cheng Yaojia was so embarrassed that she couldn't speak when she was hugged by a man who wasn't her husband. It was as if the warmth of his fingers still lingered on her lips. For a moment, she was dazed. Madam's waist is so soft. Song Qing-shu subconsciously pinched it and lowered his head to whisper in her ear. I'll stay here and wait for you. Cheng Yaojia's heart was thumping. She suddenly felt that her decision, just now, was a mistake. Really? Song Qing-shu asked her with a smile. The two of them were so close. When he saw the rosy cheeks of the woman in front of him, he couldn't help but secretly sigh. This woman had been married for so long, yet her skin was still so good. Lu Guaning's luck with women was really not shallow. Cheng Yaojia hesitated and couldn't make up her mind. Song Qing-shu understood. Since Madam can't make a decision, then I'll help Madam make it. After he said that, he didn't wait for her to answer. He hugged her and flew out the door. Cheng Yaojia was shocked. She subconsciously wanted to cry out in alarm, but she remembered his warning and quickly covered her mouth with her hand. Seeing her actions, Song Qing-shu couldn't help but laugh. Madam, you are really cute. Cheng Yaojia was extremely embarrassed and turned her head away. She didn't even dare to look at him. Song Qing-shu was very happy with the warm and moving body in his arms. He almost whistled. However, he also knew that the matter at hand was more important. So he gradually put away his frivolous smile and carefully flew around the courtyard with her. This made Cheng Yaojia suffer. Song Qing-shu was a person who had experienced thousands of flowers. Although this level of hugging was also very tempting, he quickly returned to normal. But she was different. She was originally a young lady who didn't go out of the house. She usually read books like Women's Training and biographies of women. Occasionally, she would secretly read Romance of the Western Chamber and so on. She already felt that it was very inappropriate. She didn't even dare to think about hugging another man like this. Their bodies were so close to each other that Cheng Yaojia had a vague illusion. It was as if the masculine scent of the other party penetrated her clothes and penetrated her delicate skin and then into her body. Her body became softer and softer, but her heartbeat became faster and faster. Song Qing-shu quickly noticed her abnormality and couldn't help but gently say, "This matter is urgent. Madam, please don't take it to heart. I won't tell anyone about what happened today." Feeling the gentleness in his voice, Cheng Yaojia gradually calmed down. After all, she was also a disciple of the Chuanjin sect and had the heroic spirit of a Jianghu person. After the extreme shyness, she simply opened her heart and even took the initiative to hug the other party's waist to reduce his burden. She noticed that the other party was hugging her and casually moved his toes. Like a night owl, he silently glided through the night sky. The next moment, he appeared more than 10 feet away. Cheng Yaojia was so surprised that she couldn't close her mouth. She thought that this person's martial arts were actually so high. When it came to eavesdropping, Song Qing-shu was already very familiar with it. With a glance, he recognized the location of his target. Holding Cheng Yaojia in his arms, he moved stealthily all the way to the roof. Carefully lifting the roof tiles to look down, Song Qing-shu suddenly sucked in a breath of cold air. My goodness, they were all acquaintances. Not to mention the Xianming elders. Standing above them were the Jin gang sect leader and Taoist priest Bai Sang. Behind them were Ada and Ayer. He didn't recognize the people on the other side, but Song Qing-shu could tell that they didn't know martial arts. He guessed that they were officials from the Mongolian side. However, what surprised Song Qing-shu the most was that the person sitting at the head of the table was not Zhao Min, but a young master dressed in embroidered clothes. Alas, I've been looking forward to this in vain. It seems that we are not fated to meet this time. Thinking of Zhao Min's bright and beautiful appearance, Song Qing-shu secretly sighed. Young prince, in short, judging from the current information, Li Kaxiu should only be feigning civility with us. I'm afraid he is more inclined to rely on the Southern Song dynasty. Hearing the voice coming from below, Song Qing-shu's heart stirred. Young prince, in addition to the masters of the Ryong Palace in this room, it seems that this young master dressed in embroidered clothes is Zhao Min's elder brother, Wang Baobao. Chapter 10:37. Song Qingshu snickered inwardly. Compared to his sister, Zhao Min, Wang Baobao was much more violent and direct. Young lord, you mustn't do that. As expected, a Mongolian official began to panic. Now the Great Khan is focusing on the Western countries. The Central Plain is negotiating peace with the Southern Song. If we kill the Southern Song envoy now, I'm afraid it will ruin the Great Khan's plan. If the Great Khan blames us, even Prince Ryong can't bear the consequences. Song Qingshu nodded secretly. It seemed that the Mongolians had indeed shifted their focus to the west. He had to make good use of this time. Otherwise, when the Mongolians conquered the west and gathered the resources of the world to conquer the Central Plain, it would be too late to stop them. Wang Baobao snorted. I'm not that stupid. At worst, I'll just control the Southern Song envoy and not kill them. In that case, I'll see how Li Kashio can negotiate peace with the Southern Song. Another Mongolian official chimed in. Young lord, that's a brilliant plan. Li Kashio has been feigning civility with us, hasn't he? Let's take control of the Southern Song dynasty's envoy and cut off his other options. Wang Baobao was very satisfied with his subordinate's response. He turned to the other side and asked, Have you found out where the Southern Song envoy is staying? Originally, the Southern Song dynasty's diplomatic mission was well hidden. But today, when the imperial envoy of the Jin Kingdom broke into the Jade Pure Temple, Li Kashio, who had been hiding in the dark, immediately came out to save them. It was very suspicious. I sent someone to investigate and confirm that the Southern Song dynasty's diplomatic mission was indeed staying in the Jade Pure Temple. Moreover, the envoy this time was Han Xingzhou, a political advisor of the Southern Song dynasty. What a big fish. At the same time, Wang Baobao sneered, and the minister and marshal of the Jin Kingdom actually came here. When I finish dealing with the affairs in the Southern Song dynasty, I'll kill him and make the Jin court more chaotic. Song Qingshu secretly wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. He was really caught in the crossfire. But Han Xingzhou has many guards around him, and the Taoist priest of the Jade Pure Temple seems to be with them. As one of the 5 temples of Wu-Tang, the Jade Pure Temple is very powerful. I'm afraid it won't be so easy. Someone said worriedly, How many experts can Han Chuanzhou bring with him in secret? Not to mention that the Clear Jade Monastery is one of the 5 temples of Wudong. Even the Wudong sect was once this prince's prisoner. Wang Baobao blushed as soon as he finished speaking. After all, this was all thanks to his sister, Zhao Min, father attaché's great importance to this matter. The Ryong mansion has sent out all the experts. How could they not deal with a mere Han Kaizhou? If we really want to attack, a trifling Han Xingzhou is naturally nothing. However, doing so will cause too much of commotion. If the entire Yangzhou city finds out, I'm afraid it will go against our original intentions. Someone pointed out the crux of the matter. Wang Baobao nodded slightly. That's right. We can't openly clash with Song at this critical juncture. The entire matter must be completed quietly in an extremely short period of time. Only then will it be convenient for this king to carry out the subsequent plans. Mr. Crane, did you bring enough tendon-weakening powder this time? Hebe patted his waist pouch and laughed mischievously. Don't worry, young prince. Even 10 Clear Jade Monastery can be taken down. Hearing that they were planning to use such a despicable poison, Chang Yaojia, who was worried about her husband's safety, could not help but tremble. She accidentally stepped on the tiles on the side. Song Qingshu could not help but curse inwardly. Who is it? Priest Baisang suddenly raised his head. Like a cannonball, he rushed toward the roof. Before he arrived, the cold wind from his palm caused Chang Yaojia to shiver all over. Song Qingshu hastily grabbed Chang Yaojia's waist and forcibly moved to the side about 10 feet. He was worried that the Mongolians would recognize his current identity. In order to avoid unnecessary trouble, he hastily took out Chang Yaojia's brocade veil and covered his face. Just as he covered his face, an extremely masculine finger force came from behind him. Song Qing-shu did not want to reveal his martial arts, so he raised his hand and used the solitary yang finger he had learned not long ago to meet the force. The two fingers collided and their bodies shook at the same time. The other side violently retreated, smashed the roof, and fell into the room. Because Song Qing-shu was carrying a person in his arms, he was afraid that he would hurt her and was unable to completely disperse the force. He was also forced to fall into the courtyard. As soon as he fell, Wang Baobao's martial arts experts rushed out and surrounded the two of them. Seeing that Song Qing-shu was trapped because of her, Cheng Yaojia said apologetically, "I'm sorry. I have implicated you." Song Qing-shu smiled and said, "It was I who decided to bring you here. You're not to be blamed." Miss Cheng's heart was moved. She knew that Mongolia and the Jin Kingdom were mortal enemies. With his status, if he fell into the hands of the Mongolians, he would have no chance of survival. But even so, he didn't blame her. In comparison, her husband's actions were too chilling. She was moved and sad at the same time. Cheng Yaojia bit her lips and struggled out of his arms. She stood in front of him and said, "I will help you block them. Your qin gong is good. Quickly take advantage of the chaos to escape." Seeing that she was using the Chuanjin sex, 3 flowers gathering one's prominence palm technique, it was obvious that she was going to risk her life to fight for a chance of survival. Song Qing-shu could not help but be moved. He pulled her back and said, "Don't mess around. Believe me, I will protect you." Cheng Yaojia originally wanted to say something, but when she saw his sincere eyes, she was a bit dazed and subconsciously nodded her head. "Who are you? How dare you eavesdrop on our conversation?" Wang Baobao came out of the room. His complexion was very unsightly. He did not know how long this person had stayed on the roof. If the secret was leaked, it would be terrible. Seeing the glint in his eyes, Song Qing-shu knew that he had a murderous intent. He could not help but smile and pointed to the embroidered flower on the handkerchief. "I am Jiang, whose people call me the Embroidery Bandit. When I saw that the young lady in your mansion was so beautiful, I could not help but feel my hands itch. I did not expect that you would discover me." Although she knew that he was deliberately trying to mislead them, hearing him call her young lady in such a frivolous tone, an indescribable feeling gradually emerged in Cheng Yaojia's heart. Who brought this woman here? Wang Baobao looked at Cheng Yaojia and felt that she was very unfamiliar. He could not help but look at his subordinates with an unfriendly expression. This operation was a top secret. Even he did not bring his concubines with him. Who had the guts to bring a woman back? Lu Zhangke's complexion changed greatly. He hastily stepped forward and said, "Reporting to your majesty, this subordinate ran into her outside a moment ago. I could not help but I brought her back." "Scoundrel!" Wang Baobao flew into a rage. However, when he remembered that he still needed the help of his master and disciple, he had no choice but to restrain himself. "Who can tell me who this embroidery bandit is?" The group of people looked at each other in dismay. Ada frowned and replied, "Reporting to young prince, there does not seem to be such a person in Jianghu. However, from his nickname, he should be a lowly flower thief. Before he joined the Ryong Palace, he was the head of the beggar sect's 4 great elders. He was known as the 8-armed divine sword Fong Dongbai, so he was very familiar with the people of Jianghu. He is from the Duan family of Dali. Just now, he used the solitary yang finger. At this time, a man who looked like a monk ran out, his face covered in dirt. He pointed at Song Qing-shu and shouted. Song Qing-shu recognized him as the man who had just used the solitary yang finger on him. It turned out to be the leader of the Jin Gang school. No wonder he was able to use such a powerful finger force. Could it be the Duan Zhongshan, the Jinan Prince of Dali? Ada said hesitantly. The experts of the Duan family of Dali usually practiced Buddhism. They were either eminent monks or stood aloof from worldly affairs. Duan Zhongshan was the only one who had the hobby of picking flowers. Bah! Who does Duan Zhongshan think he is? How could he have such a strong finger force? I'm afraid he is the South Emperor, one of the 5 uniques of the Central Plains. The leader of the Jin Gang school had just used the solitary yang finger on him, and his finger was still aching. Naturally, He did not believe that the man before him was a playboy. This, Ada smiled bitterly. The South Emperor has been a monk for many years, and her Buddhist name is Reverend Eating. She would never do something like this. Moreover, although this man's face is covered, he is obviously in the prime of his life. He is definitely not Reverend Eating. Song Qing-shu listened to them talking and guessing his identity more and more ridiculous. He was happy to watch them make a fool of themselves. After all, the more ridiculous their guesses were, the better it was for him. All right, Wang Baobao felt a headache coming on. No matter who he is, let's take him down first. Yes, sir. Lu Zhanke wanted to make up for his mistake, so he was the first to rush forward. Song Qing-shu still had the leisure to turn his head around and say to Miss Chung, who was behind him, "Madam, this old man offended you just now. Let me teach him a lesson on your behalf." Lu Zhanke was already in a bad mood. The beautiful young woman he was about to kiss was snatched away, and he was also taught a lesson by the young prince. When he heard Song Qing-shu's words, he was so angry that his lungs almost exploded. "You are courting death," he shouted. Immediately, he exerted all his internal energy and sent a palm strike towards Song Qing-shu's chest. Even from a distance, Miss Chung could feel a cold air pressing toward her. She looked over in shock and saw that there was a faint flow of cold ice on Lu Zhanke's palm. She could not help but cry out in alarm, "Watch out!" Song Qing-shu turned his head around and smiled at her. Using his solitary yang finger, he thrust it toward Lu Zhanke's palm. These last few years, his martial arts skill had advanced by leaps and bounds. Nowadays, he was able to talk and laugh with Zhang Sanfeng, Wang Chongyang, and the others. Although Lu Zhanke's martial arts skill was high, there was still a gap between them. Lu Zhanke felt his palm go numb, and then the acupoints on his entire arm were sealed in an instant. He was indescribably shocked and hastily retreated backward, but his face had already suffered 2 solid slaps. Song Qing-shu could not help but sigh in admiration. The solitary yang finger was indeed miraculous. In addition to his current world-shaking internal energy, his cultivation base, and his vision, the solitary yang finger was simply a great weapon to break the internal energy of a martial art master. Incidentally, it also had the effect of sealing acupoints. Among the Duan family of Dali, other than Reverend Eating, perhaps no one else could train the solitary yang finger to this level. "Madam, have you vented the anger in your heart?" Song Qing-shu pointed at the 2 red palm marks on Lu Zhanke's face and looked at Miss Chung. Actually, just now he had the opportunity to take Lu Zhanke's life, but he remembered that although these 2 old men were hateful, they had always been Zhao Min's loyal henchmen. As the saying goes, when beating a dog, one must look at its master. If he really killed Lu Zhanke, the next time he met Zhao Min, he was afraid he would not be able to explain himself. Chapter 1038. Miss Chung had personally witnessed Lu Zhanke's martial arts skill. He was able to easily defeat Zhang Hongfan's group of hooligans. When she fought him, she was also subdued in just 1 move. Perhaps even her Shifu could not compare with this level of martial arts skill. She thought about it and concluded that among all the people she knew, only Huang Yaoshi and Guo Jing could defeat this man. Who would have thought that such an expert would be as helpless as a 3-year-old child in front of this man? Miss Chung was somewhat dumbfounded. He was surrounded by powerful enemies, but the man in front of her was still talking cheerfully and wittily. Miss Chung did not know why, but she felt as if she had returned to the time when she was a young girl. When she read the love stories and romance of the Western Chamber, her heart would beat faster. Looking at his curly beard, Miss Chung did not feel that he was rude. Instead, she felt that he looked handsome and extraordinary. Chung Yaojia's face turned red, but she quickly remembered that she was someone's wife. She quickly looked away, but her heart was still beating uncontrollably. The experts of the Ryong Palace were stunned by Song Qing-shu's attack. Even Taoist priest Bai Sheng and the leader of Jinggang School had ugly expressions on their faces. Although their martial arts were far above Lu Zhanke's, it was still impossible for them to injure him in 1 move. Where did this embroidery bandit come from? How could he be so powerful? Wang Baobao coldly snorted and said, "Everyone, let's attack together. We must not let him escape." "Yes, sir." The dozens of foreign monks in the courtyard shouted and attacked together. The Ryong Palace had many experts, but they also had their own factions. Taoist priest Baixing and the leader of Jinggang School had high status and the highest level of martial arts. Nominally, they were personally commanded by Prince Ruyang. The Xianming elders, Ada, Aer, San, and the Divine Arrow 8 heroes were the experts under Zhao Min. As the heir of the Ruyang Palace, Wang Baobao's subordinates were not inferior to his sisters. He had a total of 18 foreign monks with excellent martial arts. They were known as the 18 Vajra. They were divided into 5 sabers, 5 swords for staffs, and 4 symbols. In a one-on-one fight, each Vajra was not a match for the Xianming elders. However, when 4 or 5 of them joined forces, they could easily defeat any one of the Xianming elders. It was easy to imagine how strong the 18 Vajra were when they joined forces. The 2 foreign monks took a step forward shoulder to shoulder. Each of them thrust their right palms toward the chest. Song Qingshu had never seen these foreign monks before, but he could sense that their skills were inferior to the Xianming elders. So, he didn't take it too seriously. He waved his left palm and pushed back the 2 monks' palm energy. At this time, his main focus was still on guarding against Priest 100 damages and the Jin Gang faction master. After all, their martial arts were too high. If they really joined hands to launch a sneak attack, he was afraid that it would be very troublesome. The 2 foreign monks shouted in unison, "Ami, Ami, 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 Ami." It sounded like they were chanting an incantation, but it also sounded like they were cursing. Although Cheng Yaojia's temperament was usually weak, when she saw that Song Qingshu was fighting with so many people to protect her, she wanted to help him. However, her martial arts skill was too low. In front of these martial arts masters, she was completely useless. She had no choice but to use her mouth to help him. "You are the Ami Ami how?" She was usually shy, not to mention cursing people. She had never said anything harsh. But now, for the sake of Song Qingshu, she was cursing these foreign monks. Her face turned red with shame, and she wished that there was a hole in the ground to crawl into. The 2 foreign monks retreated 3 steps. The 2 foreign monks behind them each stretched out their right palms and pressed their palms against the back of one of the foreign monks, pushing them back. The 2 foreign monks did not change their stance. They attacked with the Pai Shanzhong. Song Qingshu frowned. Actually, with his Qinggong, he could easily evade, but there was Cheng Yaojia behind him. Of course, he could hold her and evade together. But if he did that, Priest 100 damages and the Jin Gang faction master, who had been eyeing him like a tiger watching its prey, would not let go of such a good opportunity. When the time came, he would be in the air, and he would also be holding Cheng Yaojia in his arms. Therefore, he had no choice but to stand motionless to deal with the 2 foreign monks' attack. Right now the enemy was numerous, and he was outnumbered. Naturally, he did not want to fight them head-on and waste his internal energy. Immediately, he tried to neutralize the 2 monks' attack. Unexpectedly, as soon as his fingers touched the 2 monks' palms, like a magnet, his fingers were firmly glued to the 2 monks' palms. The 2 foreign monks immediately shouted, "Ami, Ami, Ami, Ami." Song Qingshu struggled twice, but to his surprise, he was unable to free himself. He could not help but was startled. Hastily, he circulated the incomparably vigorous internal energy in his body to counterattack. He wanted to send them flying in an instant, but who would have thought that the 2 foreign monks did not move even the slightest bit? Turned out there were 22 foreign monks behind the 2 foreign monks lined up in 2 rows, each with their right palms pressed against the back of the one in front of them. 24 foreign monks lined up in 2 rows. Song Qingshu suddenly remembered. The Tibetan Buddhism sect has a method to link their internal energy. In The Return of the Condor Heroes, the Erba's 5 disciples combined their strength, were able to match Hong Qigong's palms. In The Deer and the Cauldron, Jiunan Shirtai assassinated Kangxi among the Shaolin Temple's martial art masters and kidnapped Wei Xiaobao. In the end, facing 6 Tibetan Buddhism sect's foreign monks, she nearly had her boat capsized in the gutter. These 24 foreign monks are concentrating their strength to block my palms. Even if my internal energy is strong, fighting against 24 people head-on is a bit too unwise. He was afraid the others would seize the opportunity to attack him, so he decided to end the battle quickly. With a clear whistle, he increased his strength by 30%, and suddenly he pushed diagonally, followed by his body dodging to the left. This way, the 24 foreign monks' strength could no longer be linked in a straight line. The 6 foreign monks in front were unable to stop their steps and rushed toward him. Song Qingshu repeatedly waved his hands. Slap, 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 slap. 6 foreign monks fell to the ground. Blood spurted from their mouths. But the 7th and 8th foreign monks behind them also rushed forward, waving their palms to attack. With a cold laugh, Song Qingshu said, "Isn't it the same?" His right palm struck out to meet the 2 monks' palms. He gathered his strength and was about to push diagonally when suddenly he heard a strong gust of wind behind his back. He knew Priest Bai Shuang and the leader of Jin Gang had finally made their move. His heart sank. Turned out Priest Bai Shuang and the leader of Jin Gang had been watching from the sidelines all along. The more they watched, the more apprehensive they were. They realized that this man's martial arts skill was above theirs, so they were not his match in a one-on-one fight. However, their status was too high, so they could not bring themselves to use numbers to bully the few. However, seeing Song Qingshu was entangled by those 20-some foreign monks, they knew this was a once-in-a-blue-moon opportunity. In addition to Wang Baobao's previous order, they could take advantage of the situation and attack together. As Zhongshe martial art masters, naturally their eyesight was not a small matter. They could see that right now Song Qingshu's hands were stuck by the foreign monks, and both sides were at the critical moment of competing their internal energy. Song Qingshu's entire body did not have the slightest bit of defensive power. Their thunderous joint attack would certainly kill him on the spot. Chapter 1039. Daoist 100 damages and the leader of the Jingang sect were known for being vicious and merciless. In their dictionaries, there was no such thing as having tender and protective feelings for the fairer sex. Seeing Miss Chung standing in front of them, the 2 of them did not hesitate and directly attacked her body. At the same time, they had the idea of using her body to transfer their internal energy to the unfathomable embroidery bandit. Before their attacks could reach her, Miss Chung was already suffocated by the biting cold wind from their palms. She was unable to move, and her mind was completely blank. Song Qingshu also noticed the strange situation behind him and was extremely anxious. It must be known that Xiao Long Nu had been hit by the Chuanjin 5 Masters 7 Stars Gathering. If she had not practiced the Jade Maiden Heart Sutra to an extremely high level, she would have died on the spot. Now that Daoist 100 damages and the leader of the Jingang sect were attacking with all their strength, the power was probably above the Chuanjin 5 Masters 7 Stars Gathering. Miss Cheng's internal energy was far inferior to Xiao Long Nu's. If she was hit, she would probably die in an instant. Even if he had the solitary Yang finger and the Zen of Bliss, he would not be able to save her in time. Song Qingshu had a good impression of this shy young woman. Moreover, now that she had risked her life to block the palm for him, how could he just stand by and watch a tragedy unfold? Song Qingshu clenched his teeth and, despite his internal injuries, forcibly pulled back his palm. Then he grabbed Miss Cheng's slender waist and used the imminent skyline technique at that critical moment. Everyone in the courtyard only saw a blur, and in the next moment, Song Qingshu had already appeared several zhang away with Miss Chung in his arms. Song Qingshu's current internal energy was very powerful. Just now, when he suddenly withdrew his internal energy, he had already suffered a serious internal injury. In addition, he had forcefully used the imminent skyline technique, which consumed a lot of his internal energy. Because of this, when he had just teleported here, his legs went soft and he was unable to stand firm, causing him to stagger to the side. Fortunately, his reaction was fast enough. He took the opportunity to spin a few times to reduce the impact of his teleportation. Sheng Yaojiao was held in his arms. When she turned around, she looked up at his face. She felt like she was in a dream and unconsciously blushed. Song Qingshu couldn't help but wipe off the cold sweat on his forehead. How did it turn out to be like those chilling scenes in TV dramas? It was so embarrassing. He really didn't do it on purpose. In order to dispel the awkwardness in his heart, he hurriedly shifted his gaze to where the two of them were previously. On the other side, when the 24 foreign monks saw Song Qingshu suddenly pulled back his palm, their hearts were overjoyed. In a contest of internal energy, if one side suddenly pulled back his palm, it was simply an act of opening the door and inviting a thief to his own death. They wanted to take advantage of Song Qingshu's illness to take his life, so they suddenly seized the opportunity to attack, not giving the opponent any chance to breathe. Who would have thought that Song Qingshu would suddenly vanish in a thin air in front of them? What appeared next was Taoist 100 damages and the guardian deity's all-out attack. By this time, both sides could clearly see what was going on. They couldn't help but groan inwardly, but they had no other choice. At this time, if either side pulled back their palms, it would be a dead end. Therefore, both sides had no choice but to brace themselves and meet each other's palms head-on. Although the guardian deity and Taoist 100 damages martial arts skills were far superior to these foreign monks, this was a contest of internal energy, so they couldn't use any tricks. In addition, the foreign monks had a miraculous body fusion technique. When their palms met, the guardian deity and Taoist 100 damages faces instantly turned red. The 24 foreign monks also swayed simultaneously. Song Qingshu knew very well that if he launched a sneak attack at this time, this group of people would either die or be seriously injured. However, the Ryong Palace's martial art masters were almost wiped out, so it was not in his interest. Presently, Yangzhou's situation was incomparably complicated. He needed the Ryong Palace's strength to break the deadlock. After weighing the pros and cons, Song Qingshu let out a long laugh and said, "The night is long. I still want to accompany a beautiful woman. Please forgive me for not accompanying you." Finished speaking, he hugged Cheng Yaojia and leaped forward several times, disappearing into the darkness of the night. The divine arrow 8 heroes hastily released their arrows. Unfortunately, Song Qingshu's silhouette was untraceable. How could they hit him? They could only watch helplessly as the two of them left. Wang Baobao had witnessed the whole process of Song Qingshu carrying a delicate woman and easily escaping from the encirclement of martial art masters. Wang Baobao's complexion couldn't help but turn ashen. Looking at the courtyard where both sides were still fighting each other with bloodshot eyes and thick necks, he was even angrier. "Enough! Both of you stop." With Wang Baobao's interference, both sides dared to withdraw their internal energy bit by bit. Finally, they succeeded in stopping. Who can tell me the background of that embroidery bandit? Wang Baobao's complexion was very unsightly. The martial art masters in the courtyard looked at each other in dismay. They could see the fear in each other's eyes. All along, they had been very conceited about their own martial arts. They believed that with their strength, they could easily sweep away all the major sects of the Central Plains. They didn't expect that they would be toyed with by a martial art master who came out of nowhere. Seeing that no one answered, Wang Baobao became even more irritated. After thinking for a moment, he ordered, "In order to prevent the Southern Song dynasty from being on guard, we will move the plan forward. We will take action tonight." The Mongolians had won every battle they fought. The essence of their tactics was speed. Wang Baobao was a famous Mongolian general of the new generation. Naturally, he had also comprehended the essence of lightning warfare. Yes, the martial art masters loudly obeyed the order. They had just lost face in front of their master. Right now, they were all excited and wanted to wash away their shame. Noticing the high morale of his subordinates, Wang Baobao nodded his head in satisfaction. He waved his hand and said, "Let's go." Song Qingshu carried Cheng Yaojia for a long time. He didn't know how much time had passed. He estimated that the people from the Ryong Palace wouldn't be able to catch up to them, so he put her down. As soon as they stopped, Song Qingshu couldn't help but cry out and vomit a mouthful of blood. Chung Yaojia's beautiful face immediately turned pale. She worriedly grabbed his sleeve and asked, "What happened to you?" "I suffered some internal injuries just now. It's not a big deal." Song Qingshu wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and smiled without a care in the world. "You vomited blood. How could it not be a big deal? I brought some healing medicine from the Chuanjin sect. You should quickly take it." Chung Yaojia anxiously took out a pill from her bosom. "It's just vomiting blood. I'll get used to it after vomiting." Song Qingshu faintly smiled and pressed her hand to make her take back the pill. "I'll circulate my internal energy to regulate my breathing, and I'll be fine." After he finished speaking, he sat on the ground and circulated his internal energy. Although the injury he had just suffered wasn't light, his internal energy had already reached the perfection realm. It had already cycled back and forth, growing and multiplying endlessly. He only needed to circulate it a few times, and his internal energy would be completely healed. When Chung Yaojia saw him circulate his internal energy just like that, she couldn't help but jump in fright. In her impression, the people around her, whether it was her master or her elders, would find a quiet room where they wouldn't be disturbed when they were healing. They would even have someone they could trust on the side to protect them, who would casually find a place to sit down and start healing like this. However, when she saw his amazing martial arts in the He Garden, she inexplicably trusted him. She quietly looked at him and thought, "I didn't expect his martial arts to be so high. I even wanted to kidnap him and escape from the Dao Tai Yamen." Thinking of her naive thoughts, Chung Yaojia couldn't help but smile shyly. Because Song Qingshu was healing, she was bored to death and sat next to him. She blankly stared at him, lost in thought. Chung Yaojia saw the brocade handkerchief he had used to cover his face fall to the side of the grass. She picked it up and subconsciously wanted to put it back into her bosom. After all, she had specially embroidered this brocade handkerchief for her husband. A few days ago, he had snatched it away. She had always wanted to take it back, but unfortunately, she didn't have the opportunity. Now that the opportunity had appeared, she hesitated. She didn't know what she was thinking. She held the brocade handkerchief in midair and didn't move. Suddenly, from the corner of her eyes, she noticed the sweat on the forehead of the man next to her. She remembered that he had suffered an internal injury in order to save her. Her heart immediately softened. She picked up the brocade handkerchief and gently wiped it for him. After wiping his sweat, Chung Yaojia stared at the brocade handkerchief in her hand in a daze. Thinking of all the excessive things her husband had done recently, she couldn't help but become angry. "Since you don't like this brocade handkerchief, I'll give it to someone else." All these years, she had always followed the rules. But once she had this bold idea, she couldn't stop the impulse in her body. Chung Yaojia's heart was pounding. She saw that Song Qingshu was still healing with his eyes closed. She used her trembling fingers to pick up the brocade handkerchief and quietly stuffed it into the arms of the man next to her. A smile appeared on Song Qingshu's lips. "Is this the token of love that Madam gave me?" Chung Yaojia was very nervous and almost jumped up in fright. She looked up and saw that Song Qingshu had already opened his eyes and was looking at her with a smile that wasn't a smile. She wished that there was a hole in the ground that she could crawl into. "You bully me." Chung Yaojia was about to cry. Song Qingshu laughed and said, "When did I bully you? You clearly woke up just now, but you pretended to be healing. You deliberately made fun of me. Isn't that bullying?" Chung Yaojia's tears streamed down her face, and she couldn't stop them. Seeing her tears, Song Qingshu suddenly panicked. He quickly took out a handkerchief and wiped the tears on her face. "I'm innocent. I was really healing just now. I didn't wake up until you touched me." Chung Yaojia's face turned red. She stretched out her white and tender hand and said, "Give it to me." "Give what to me?" Song Qingshu was confused. Chung Yaojia glanced at the brocade handkerchief in his hand and said with a red face, "That." Song Qingshu suddenly understood, but he didn't have the slightest intention of returning it to her. Instead, he put it back in his arms and said, "This won't do. You already gave it to me." "When did I give it to you?" "It was obviously you who snatched it." Chung Yaojia braced herself. and said. Song Qing-shu suddenly laughed and said, "Then who was the one who personally stuffed this brocade handkerchief into my arms?" Cheng Yaojiao's pretty face turned as red as rose petals. "Just consider my gift. But I've changed my mind. Give it back to me." After saying that, she threw herself at him, trying to snatch it back. However, Song Qing-shu's reaction was faster. He pulled his hand back, and Cheng Yaojiao pounced on empty air. She lost her balance and immediately fell into his arms. With Song Qing-shu's martial arts, he naturally had countless ways to support her. However, how could he be an unromantic man? He simply didn't react and let the other party fall towards him. Chapter 1040. Cheng Yaojiao's mind was in a daze. It wasn't until Song Qing-shu pried open her lips, pried open her pearly white teeth, and their tongues touched that she finally came back to her senses. She pushed him away and ran to the side like a frightened rabbit, leaving only her back to him. Her delicate figure trembled in the cold night wind, making her look particularly delicate and pitiful. Song Qing-shu was also a little embarrassed. His action just now was completely a subconscious reaction. How could a shy and decent person endure such an action? Just now, just as Song Qing-shu was about to speak, Cheng Yaojia interrupted him. Nothing happened just now. Since the woman had already said so, Song Qing-shu didn't say anything else. How about I return this brocade handkerchief to madam? As soon as the words left his mouth, Song Qing-shu wanted to slap himself. Could it be that he hadn't practiced for a long time? Now he was acting like a little boy. Hearing his words, Cheng Yaojia's body trembled. However, her answer was unexpected. In any case, it's already dirty. You can keep it for yourself. Song Qing-shu couldn't help but be startled. What did this mean? Why did madam risk her life to save me just now? Thinking back to how Cheng Yaojia had risked her life to protect him in the He Garden, Song Qing-shu was immediately moved. I don't know why. At that time, my mind was blank. Cheng Yaojia was also somewhat absent-minded. Perhaps it was because you didn't want to save me. You wouldn't have fallen into danger. Couldn't it be because you couldn't bear to see me die? Song Qing-shu walked in front of her and softly asked, I hope Darren can conduct himself with dignity. Cheng Yaojia bit her lips and turned around with a red face. Unfortunately, Song Qing-shu's face had already been trained to be thicker than a city wall. He ran in front of her again and asked, How am I not conducting myself? Cheng Yaojia couldn't help but roll her eyes at him. She sweetly snorted and said, Darren, you don't have any self-respect, thinking about how her lips, which had never been touched by another man, had been wantonly tasted by him just now. She felt ashamed and angry. However, she also knew that the kiss was an accident, so she was too embarrassed to blame him. Half of Song Qing-shu's body went limp because of her coquettish voice. He was about to say something when Cheng Yaojia beat him to it and said, I want to go back. So early? Song Qing-shu's disappointment was written all over his face. Miss Cheng was so angry that she almost laughed. She thought that it was already the middle of the night. How could it be early? Not to mention that she was now a wife. Even when she was still unmarried, there was no reason for her to stay out so late with a man. Song Qing-shu also realized that his words were a bit unreasonable, so he hurriedly said, Then I'll send you back. No need. Miss Cheng hurriedly waved her hand. First of all, her husband had misunderstood her because of him. If he saw the two of them together in the middle of the night, what would happen? Second of all, when she was with him, her heart was always beating fast. After all, she was a traditional woman who followed the rules. After realizing this, she decided to stay as far away from him as possible. She didn't want to do something that would bring disgrace to her family. Seeing that she was avoiding his gaze, Song Qing-shu couldn't help but find it funny. He said, Am I that scary? What if you run into someone like Lu Zhanka again? You can't be so lucky to run into me every time. When she heard him mention Lu Zhanka, Cheng Yaojia immediately hesitated. Compared to Lu Zhanka and Zhang Hongfan, these lowly perverts, this man beside her could be considered a gentleman. Moreover, even if she took 10,000 steps back, Even if something that she shouldn't have happened with him, it would be far better than being defiled by those lowly perverts. But because of what happened before, Lu Lang has already suspected us. Miss Chung was too embarrassed to say the rest of the words. Song Qing-shu immediately understood her worries and said with a smile, "Don't worry. I'll take you to the vicinity of the clear jade temple and then leave. I won't appear in front of your husband." Thank you. Miss Chung immediately felt a bit apologetic. "This is too unfair to you." Song Qing-shu waved his hand indifferently and said, "Just think of it as me thanking Madam for risking her life to save me today." Miss Cheng's small face turned red again. She lowered her head and walked in the direction of the clear jade temple. Now that there were no pursuers behind them, she certainly couldn't let Song Qing-shu hold her waist and fly away. Song Qing-shu also enjoyed spending time with her, so he didn't rush her. The two of them walked slowly along the river toward the clear jade temple. Along the way, the two of them chatted a lot. However, most of the time, it was Song Qing-shu asking questions and Miss Chung answering passively. Although she was very shy and reserved, she couldn't resist Song Qing-shu's questioning methods. Along the way, it was estimated that other than some secret characteristics of her body, everything else was known to Song Qing-shu. For example, who was in her family? Did she get along well with her parents-in-law? What interesting things had she experienced since she was a child? Chung Yaojia also gradually relaxed. She was no longer as guarded against him as before. Instead, she treated him as a very good friend. The two of them chatted and laughed along the way. Unknowingly, time passed. Seeing the outline of the clear jade temple not far away, Miss Chung felt a trace of reluctance in her heart. What's wrong with me? So what if I get along with him? I'm already married. Not to mention, he's a golden man. When they parted, Miss Chung was a bit absent-minded for a moment. Song Qing-shu looked in the direction of the clear jade temple with a dignified expression and said, "Wait, there seems to be something wrong inside." "What's wrong?" Miss Chung finally came to her senses. Thinking that her husband was still inside, she suddenly became anxious. "I'm not sure. I think I heard the sound of fighting." Song Qing-shu frowned and said, "I'll go in and check it out first." "No, I also want to go in." Thinking that her husband might be in danger, how could Miss Chung be at ease outside? Song Qing-shu suddenly had a strange expression on his face. He moved closer to her ear and said, "Madam, don't tell me you want to be hugged by me. What nonsense are you talking about?" Miss Chung suddenly scolded him and couldn't help but punch him. All right. Song Qing-shu hurriedly grabbed her hands and said, "I'll take you in, okay." Feeling the heat from his palms, Miss Cheng's heart jumped, and she quickly pulled her hands back. Although Song Qing-shu was teasing her, his attention was already on the clear jade temple. What kind of person was plotting against the Southern Song dynasty's envoy? Hugging Miss Cheng's slender waist, he tiptoed, and the two of them quietly sneaked into the pure jade monastery. Although Miss Chung had been hugged by him so many times, she was still very shy. However, thinking that he had just suffered an internal injury, she was worried about his body. After hesitating for a moment, she pressed closer to him, hoping to lessen his burden. Chapter 1041. Song Qing-shu held Chung Yaojia in his arms. The two of them hid in a dense tree in the Jade Pure Temple and could see what was happening in the courtyard. The entire Jade Pure Temple was filled with foreign monks. The Taoist priests of the Jade Pure Temple were gathered together to watch over them. Obviously, they had lost their ability to resist. Wang Baobao stood proudly in the courtyard, surrounded by the masters of the Riyang Palace. Han Chuanzhou and the others were either injured or dead. The only one who still had the strength to resist was Ling Hu Chong, who was disguised as Wu Tianda. One man and one sword, he did not fall into a disadvantageous position under the joint attack of the Xianming elders. However, he was also entangled by the two elders and could not escape. Song Qing-shu thought to himself, Ling Hu Chong's swordsmanship is extremely high. If he fought against any one of the Xianming elders, I'm afraid he would have already won. But when the Xianming elders work together, both their attack and defense are greatly improved. Even Zhang Wuji found it difficult to deal with them. let alone the current Ling Hu Chong. To be able to fight to a draw was already thanks to the magic of the 9 strategies beyond the swords and the fear of the Xianming elders. Otherwise, Ling Hu Chong would have long been restrained by the Xianming divine palm. Your companions have already surrendered. Why are you still stubbornly resisting? We Mongols value talents the most. As long as you put down your weapons and join us, I guarantee that you will be treated better than in the Southern Song. Seeing Ling Hu Chong's amazing swordsmanship, Wang Baobao suddenly became greedy. Ling Hu Chong snorted coldly. Cut the crap. He had always been chivalrous and righteous. How could he do such a thing? Han Chuanzhou could not help but angrily say, Wang Baobao, the Song and the Mongols are negotiating for peace. What you are doing is starting a war without authorization. Wang Baobao said indifferently. So what if I start a war without authorization? In any case, the people of the Southern Song are very weak. Many people in the Mongols do not approve of the Khan negotiating with you. It would be better if we really fight. In fact, he knew that this time the Khan was determined to concentrate his forces to deal with the Western countries and would not restart the war with the Southern Song at this critical moment. But how could he be so stupid as to tell them all this? As a famous Mongolian general, how could he not know how to bluff? Sure enough, Han Xingzhou was intimidated by him. His face changed from clear to gloomy, and for a moment he was speechless. In fact, he was confused because he had been planning for the northern expedition against the Jin kingdom all these years. He was about to fulfill his wish. If he were to start a war with the Mongols, the northern expedition would be for naught. Seeing that the Xianming elders couldn't take down Ling Hu Chong, Wang Baobao hurriedly said to Taoist Baishan and the guardian deity sect master, we need to settle everything as soon as possible. Otherwise, we'll be in trouble if others are alarmed. Therefore, I hope the 2 of you can take down this person. Originally, Taoist hunted damages, and the Vajra sect master would never bully a junior with numbers. However, they had suffered a great loss at the hands of the embroidery bandit, and they were too embarrassed to put on airs. Fortunately, they were surrounded by people from the prince's mansion. Presumably, no one would leak what happened today. The 2 of them glanced at each other and simultaneously attacked Ling Hu Chong. Although Ling Hu Chong's swordsmanship was high, how could he defeat so many experts? After a few moves, his swordsmanship became messy. The guardian deity sect master took advantage of an opening and directly jumped into his arms. Ling Hu Chong was shocked and subconsciously counterattacked with the 9 strategies beyond the swords. Unexpectedly, the tip of his sword stabbed into the guardian deity sect master's body as if he had stabbed into a diamond rock. The long sword in his hand was forced to bend at an exaggerated angle. Taking advantage of Ling Hu Chong's absent-minded moment, the guardian deity sect master pointed a finger at the major acupoint on his chest. Ling Hu Chong spat out a mouthful of blood and was then hit by Taoist Baishan's palm. If he didn't have the protection of the absorbing star's great technique, these 2 blows would have been enough to end his life. Fortunately, Wang Baobao cherished his talent and ordered his men to keep him alive in advance, so the Xianming elders didn't continue to stab him. As the last person was captured, the Southern Song side was no longer able to resist and were all tied up by Wang Baobao's men. Song Qingshu frowned. Although Wang Baobao had many masters under his command, the Southern Song side was not to be trifled with. They also had the help of the Taoists from the Jade Pure Temple. They had the advantage of numbers and location. How could they be subdued so quickly? Sniffing, Song Qingshu suddenly smelled a strange smell. He suddenly realized that it was the 10 fragrant tendon-weakening powder. He didn't know what method they had used to make its medicinal properties spread in the air. As a result, many people from the Jade Pure Temple lost their ability to resist in their sleep, which led to the one-sided situation of the battle. Miss Chung had been holding her clothes tightly and watching the situation below. Finally, she found that her husband looked dispirited and was being held down by a Mongolian soldier. She cried out in alarm in her heart and moved. With the previous example in He Garden, Song Qingshu had long been paying attention to her movements. Seeing that she wanted to rush in, he hurriedly pulled her back. Let me go, I want to save Lu Lang. Fortunately, there's a lot of noise in the distance, and Miss Cheng's soft voice did not alarm the people from the Ryong Palace. Song Qingshu shouted, "Madam, calm down. What's the difference between you going down now and dying? But I can't just stand by and watch Lu Lang suffer." Miss Cheng also knew that with her martial arts, she was afraid that any of the foreign monks below could defeat her. But even so, she still had the courage to live and die with her husband. Not just stand by and watch, but take your time to think. Song Qingshu was afraid that she would recklessly jump down, so he had to hold her tightly. Right now, the enemy is outnumbered and we are outnumbered. Madam, come back with me to the yamen. We will discuss how to rescue them. But Cheng Yaojia wanted to say something, but Song Qingshu immediately interrupted her. There are no buts. Don't worry. You heard it from the other side. Wang Baobao will not kill them. Aside from suffering a little, your husband's life will not be in danger for a while. Hearing his words, Miss Cheng gradually calmed down. She knew that the other party's words made sense, so she gradually gave up struggling. Seeing that she had calmed down, Song Qingshu said, "Then let's go first." Then he quietly left the pure jade monastery with her in his arms. On the way back to the Dao Tai Yamen, Song Qingshu kept comforting Miss Cheng. Unfortunately, she seemed to be absent-minded. No one knew what she was thinking. Song Qingshu had no choice but to start thinking about how to deal with the current situation. In fact, in a sense, Wang Baobao had helped him today. Originally, Li Kaxiu was about to reach an agreement with Southern Song. Song Qingshu was worried about how to stop it. In the end, Wang Baobao made such a move today, so Li Kaxiu naturally could not hook up with Southern Song. In addition, Jiang Huai was not connected to Mongolia. Li Kaxiu's innate disadvantage made it impossible for her to easily side with Mongolia. This gave Song Qingshu enough time to arrange his own plan. After returning to the yamen, Song Qingshu said to Cheng Yaojia, "Madam, you have suffered too much tonight. Go back to your room and have a good rest. I will help you think of a way to save your honorable husband." Miss Cheng nodded, but she had no intention of leaving. Instead, she followed behind him and entered his room. "Madam, what are you doing?" Song Qingshu was about to ask, but he was shocked by what happened next. He saw Miss Cheng silently take off her outer clothes, revealing her sparkling jade-like skin. As the saying goes, when the left eyelid twitches, the peach blossoms bloom. When the right eyelid twitches, the chrysanthemum blossoms. I was wondering why my right eyelid kept twitching today. When I looked at the monthly votes ranking, I immediately understood. In the morning, I was ranked 20th, but the people behind me broke my chrysanthemum 7 times in a row. Now I have fallen to 27th place. After asking around, I found out that from today until noon on the 23rd, the rewards during this period of time were double the monthly votes. What a dog. I can't keep getting broken. I have to break the chrysanthemum of the people in front of me. Begging for monthly votes. Begging for chrysanthemum. Recently, the monk also opened a public WeChat account, Monk Liu. In the future, he will post some questions related to this book and some welfare things on the public account. He will also communicate with the readers on the public account. You're welcome to tease me. Chapter 1042. Cheng Yaojia blushed and silently took off her clothes. Her 2 snow-white arms were exposed to the moonlight and looked even more sparkling like jade. Perhaps it was because of the chilly night air, or perhaps she was too nervous, but her exposed skin gradually had a layer of fine goosebumps. Song Qingshu was dumbfounded and could not react for a moment. His first thought was that the buttons on her clothes had been broken by the wind in the heat garden. After all, with Cheng Yaojia's temperament, it was impossible for her to take off her clothes in front of a man other than her husband. It was not until Cheng Yaojia reached out and began to take off the second piece of clothing that Song Qingshu finally reacted. He hurriedly stepped forward and held her hand. "Madam, what are you doing?" Cheng Yaojia lowered her head, and the expression on her face could not be seen. He could only see her red ears. He only heard her say in an inaudible voice, "You are not related to Lu Lang. It is too difficult for you to save them." Song Qingshu did not know whether to laugh or cry. Madam, you misunderstood. I did not bring you back to threaten you, but I know you are a good person. Cheng Yaojia raised her head and looked at him with a pair of big, watery eyes. You have saved me several times. I'm not the kind of person who will take a mile when given an inch. I will not pretend that I do not know anything and let you save people for free. Song Qing quickly said, I am trying to think of a way to save them. Please don't misunderstand. Cheng Yaojia smiled and shook her head. I am very grateful that you are willing to help me. However, you are a high-ranking official of the Jin Kingdom. The Song Dynasty and the Jin Kingdom have always been enemies. Seeing the Southern Song Dynasty's diplomatic mission in trouble, you have already done your best not to hit them when they are down. How can I trouble you again and again with a clear conscience? But you are in a high position and your martial arts are good. I really can't think of any reward that will interest you. After thinking about it, perhaps you will be interested in my body. Cheng Yaojia's face turned red, and she continued, I hope you will not mind that I have been married before. How can I mind that you have been married before? Song Qing answered subconsciously. After answering, he realized that it was inappropriate and smiled embarrassedly. That's not what I meant. I'm not asking you to repay me like this. Song Qing asked himself in his heart. He was indeed very interested in this shy and bashful young woman, but he always felt that something was missing when he got her like this. Now that he had experienced thousands of flowers, he was no longer a person with vulgar tastes. A gust of cold wind blew through the door. Cheng Yaojia shivered and subconsciously hugged her arms. She said bitterly, Are you going to let me stand at the door like this? Look at my memory. Song Qing slapped his forehead. It was mainly because her previous behavior was too unexpected that he was momentarily stunned. Hearing the footsteps of the patrolling guards coming from the corridor outside, Song Qing hurriedly ran over and closed the door. Even though Cheng Yaojia was someone else's wife, he did not want her body to be seen by another man. After closing the door, Song Qing hurriedly took off his coat. Cheng Yaojia's face turned even redder. She stood on the spot and trembled like a delicate and beautiful orchid. With Song Qing cultivation, how could he not notice that her heartbeat had accelerated several times? He hurriedly explained, Madam, please don't misunderstand. I didn't take off my clothes to his mouth opened and closed, but he did not know how to explain it. He simply left it to his actions to explain. He walked forward and draped the coat over her body. Song Qing said softly, Madam, you don't have to do this. I'm a sincere friend to you. I'm not a despicable person who takes advantage of others. Cheng Yaojia's body swayed, and tears streamed down her face. You are the great marshal of the Jin Kingdom. What kind of beautiful women have you not seen? How could you put a married woman in your eyes? It's my fault for not knowing my place. I wanted to use this as a condition to beg you to save Lu Lang and the others. Seeing the woman in front of him crying, Song Qing was dumbfounded. Even though he had been surrounded by thousands of flowers, sometimes he still couldn't understand a woman's thoughts. He was a gentleman at this time, so shouldn't she be happy? Why was she crying? Madam, please don't misunderstand. You are as beautiful as a flower, dignified and virtuous. You have a fatal attraction to any man. Song Qing hurriedly explained. Only then did Cheng Yaojia's sobbing gradually stop. Is it because I'm married? Song Qing was speechless. What was going on? He subconsciously explained, It's good to be married. A married woman knows how to serve a man and is happier. Halfway through his words, Song Qing suddenly realized that something was wrong. Cheng Yaojia revealed a shy and embarrassed expression. She turned around and said, You are bad. The beautiful woman was slightly angry, but her voice was indescribably delicate and moving. Song Qing heart warmed. He walked forward and hugged her from behind. How did you know that I am bad? Their bodies were now tightly pressed together. Cheng Yaojia's soft and perky buttocks were pressed against Song Qing lower abdomen. Feeling the hard pressure of the man behind her, Cheng Yaojia's voice trembled. Aren't you doing bad things to me right now? Is that so? Song Qing hugged her soft body and was reluctant to let go. His lower abdomen began to slowly rub against her body. Cheng Yaojia's face turned even redder. A woman's modesty made her subconsciously want to run away. However, she immediately remembered the purpose of coming here. She bit her lips and resisted the shyness coming from her body. Song Qingshu's fingers gently slid across her face and finally stopped on her beautiful hair. He softly praised, "How do you usually take care of your hair? It's so soft and shiny." If a man dared to put his hand on her face, she would have been so ashamed that she would have slapped him. But now, the man behind her put his hand on her face. However, she could only endure her shyness. At the same time, she had to answer his question with a trembling voice. "These are women's matters. You men won't understand even if I tell you." "That's true." Song Qingshu nodded his head in agreement. He casually untied the bun on her head and said, "Madam looks better with your hair down." She could hear the man's breath behind her. She could feel his steel needle-like beard on her neck. Chung Yaojia's body trembled even more. "We are Han women, after getting married. Our hair has to be combed into a bun. Hair down has its own beauty. Hair in a bun has its own beauty." Song Qingshu whispered in her ear, feeling the other person's hand gently stroking her soft hair. Chung Yaojia seemed to have an illusion that her skin was being caressed wantonly. Her chrysanthemum was broken, and the ground was full of injuries. After the last chapter, she was defeated all the way to 29th place. Fortunately, with the help of Scholar Halaw, Autumn Solitude, King of Meat Pigeons, and a group of enthusiastic readers, she finally reached 25th place. However, the surrounding rankings were very close. At any time, she was hovering between being defeated and being defeated. I'm going to write some more chapters to repay everyone for their support. Damn, as soon as I finished typing this line, my screen turned blue. Fortunately, the previous chapters were saved. The first Silver Alliance master of this book was finally born. It was Please Don't Make Trouble. To be honest, when I saw the other authors with so many Supreme Masters, I usually felt envious, jealous, and hateful. But today, the first Silver Alliance master was born. It made me feel as if I had lost my virginity. The monk also recently opened a public WeChat account, Monk Lu Ru. In the future, I will post some book-related inquiries and some welfare-related things on the public account. I will also communicate with the readers on the public account. I welcome everyone to come and tease me. Follow method: Android phone, open WeChat, discover, search, open public account, search for Monk Lu Ru. Based on the readers' reactions, some people couldn't find him. So, it's best to follow the steps I mentioned. Open the public account and search for Monk Lu Ru. Apple phone, open WeChat, address book, add friends in the upper right corner. Open public account, search for Monk Lu Ru. Chapter 1043. Chung Yaojia panicked and asked, "Then, do you prefer me to wear my hair in a bun or not?" As soon as the words came out of her mouth, she wished she could find a hole to hide in. Normally, it would be inconceivable for such words to come out of her mouth. Song Qingshu was very happy and whispered in her ear, "You look more dignified and graceful when you wear your hair in a bun. You look more beautiful and lively when you don't. I like both of them." Chung Yaojia was extremely embarrassed, and her cheeks were burning. She lowered her head and didn't say a word. Song Qingshu continued to ask, "Does young Master Lu usually comb your hair in a bun at home?" Chung Yaojia pursed her lips and shook her head. How could a man know how to comb a bun? However, Song Qingshu's next words greatly surprised her. "If Madam doesn't mind, I'll help you comb your hair." Chung Yaojia was somewhat absent-minded and nodded her head blankly. Song Qingshu smiled and skillfully helped her put up her hair. Not long after, a beautiful bun was done. When the man behind her used his fingers to braid her hair, Chung Yaojia felt as if there was an electric current passing through her hair. Waves of numbness rippled through her entire body, making her feel dizzy. "Madam, come and see if my skill is passable." Song Qingshu held her shoulders and pushed her in front of the bronze mirror. Chung Yaojia finally opened her eyes and looked at the rosy cheeks of the woman in the mirror. She wondered why she looked so gorgeous today. After a long time, she remembered the other party's question. She looked up and suddenly cried out in alarm. How did you do it?" She usually needed a maid to help her comb her hair. Since she had to travel to Yangzhou in a light carriage, it was impossible for her to bring a maid with her. Therefore, during this time, she was not satisfied with the results of her own hairstyle. She didn't expect that the man behind her would do it better than her. It was because he was very familiar with it. After Song Qing-shu came to this world, he had too many female friends around him. In addition, he came from his previous world and did not have as many taboos as the men in this world. Therefore, he liked to play some little games with them to improve their relationship, such as drawing eyebrows, combing hair, of course. This was not the specific reason. Facing Cheng Yaojia, Song Qing-shu had no choice but to smile and say, "It is all thanks to Madam's beautiful appearance. Otherwise, no matter how carefully I braided my hair, it would not look good." When Cheng Yaojia heard this, she felt dizzy. She had never experienced this kind of sweet talk before. Usually, her husband was very careful with his words and actions. He was afraid of offending her. Even in private, he wouldn't do anything out of line. In the eyes of outsiders, the husband and wife were incomparably loving, but in her opinion, it was more appropriate to describe them as being respectful to each other. It wasn't bad to treat each other with respect, but he always felt that something was missing. The man behind her gave her a different feeling. Although his appearance was rough, and he was far from her husband's handsomeness, he could always make her heart beat faster and her face blush. Cheng Yaojia was not an ignorant little girl. She quickly understood that the other party's sweet talk was like a machine gun. She was afraid that he had cheated many girls with it. Moreover, he was very skilled at combing his hair. She didn't know how many women he had practiced with. She didn't know why, but she suddenly felt a little jealous. She subconsciously blurted out what she was thinking. Song Qing-shu was stunned and immediately said with a smile, "I just play games with my wife at home. I made a fool of myself." Cheng Yaojia's small face turned red, and she said with some embarrassment, "Your wife is really happy." She was not surprised at all. After all, it would be strange if a man with such a high position and power didn't have a wife at this age. Moreover, when she heard him mention his wife, Cheng Yaojia felt relieved. What she had done today was wrong to her husband. What he had done was also wrong to his wife. It was as if they had the same language. "Madam, are you not happy?" Song Qing-shu gave her a meaningful look. Cheng Yaojia faintly sighed. She used to think that she was very happy, but everything changed after she came to Yangzhou. Moreover, if she was happy, she wouldn't go to another man's room in the middle of the night. Seeing her worried face, Song Qing-shu smiled. He stepped forward, grabbed her legs, and carried her. "Madam, you don't have to worry too much. Everything will be fine." Being carried by a man other than her husband, Cheng Yaojia subconsciously wanted to cry out. However, she immediately bit her lips because she thought that all of this was her own choice. In addition, he had refused her several times just now. She was worried that if she revealed her emotions, it would ruin his mood. If she couldn't persuade him to save Lu Lang tonight, it would be too late for regrets. Seeing him carry her closer and closer to the bed, Cheng Yaojia's heart beat faster and faster. Was this moment finally going to come? She didn't dare to open her eyes. She could only shyly bury her delicate head in Song Qing-shu's chest. Feeling that he had already carried her to the bed, Cheng Yaojia's whole body trembled violently. She didn't know where to put her hands. However, she remembered that she still had to persuade him to help her save Lu Lang tonight. If she kept acting like this, he would inevitably dislike her. She had no choice but to suppress her shyness and muster her courage to look at him. On his iPhone, he opened WeChat, tapped on his contacts, tapped on the top right corner to add friends, tapped on his public account, and searched for Monk LaRue, or scanned the QR code in the reader group announcement. Chapter 1044. Song Qing-shu was stunned. He looked at her with a playful expression and said, "Madam, are you sure you want to invite me to your bed? Aren't you afraid that I will do something that I shouldn't do?" Cheng Yaojia's face turned slightly red. She lowered her head and said, "I know you are a gentleman. You won't take advantage of me. I don't have as much confidence in myself as you do." Song Qing-shu shook his head and said, "Forget it. I don't want to ruin Madam's reputation." Cheng Yaojia's face turned even redder. She whispered, "I will sleep in your room. How can I talk about my reputation?" Song Qingshu smiled and said, "This is not the same. As the saying goes, the innocent are innocent and the turbid are turbid. Later, Madam can explain everything to your husband. I believe he won't blame you. If we really sleep in the same bed, no matter how big his heart is, I'm afraid it will be difficult for him to believe that nothing happened between us. In any case, he hasn't believed me for a long time." Cheng Yaojia sighed sadly. In his heart, he thinks that you and I have already. Song Qingshu patted her shoulder and comforted her. "Madam, don't worry. The misunderstanding will eventually be solved. Do you want me to explain it to him?" "Please don't." Cheng Yaojia hurriedly shook her head. When she noticed the other person's surprised expression, she blushed and said, "He thinks that you bullied me. Right now, he wants to kill you. If you explain it, it will only add fuel to the fire." "That's true," Song Qingshu muttered. "It seems that Madam can only slowly explain it to him." Cheng Yaojia replied sweetly. The whole room fell into a kind of ambiguous silence. "You're either come up or not. If you don't, I will sleep first." Cheng Yaojia turned her head, leaving only a delicate and beautiful back view for Song Qingshu. "Since Madam has kindly invited me, I will respectfully accept." Song Qingshu was not a stubborn person. If he really didn't go to bed, would he sleep on the floor the whole night? He would not mistreat himself in this regard. Since ancient times, when emperors abdicated their throne, they would still have to express their gratitude. The key point was that one's table manners could not be too unsightly. Of course, Song Qingshu did not want to take advantage of her. At least tonight was not the right time. "Who invited you?" Cheng Yaojia was extremely embarrassed. She angrily pulled the quilt over her head. Song Qingshu was stunned. "You've been inviting me all along, haven't you?" Of course, he was no longer a greenhorn who didn't know anything. He knew that girls were shy, and some things couldn't be said too clearly. "It's my fault for speaking without thinking. I hope you don't mind," Song Qingshu said softly. "Our hearts are as clear as the moon. As long as we have a clear conscience, everything will be fine." "Yes," Cheng Yaojia's voice came from under the quilt. If it wasn't for Song Qingshu's profound cultivation, he probably wouldn't have been able to hear it. "Madam, don't keep saying yes. Say something." Song Qingshu felt that it was very interesting to tease this shy young woman. He didn't know if Cheng Yaojia had seen through his ulterior motives, but she didn't even reply with a yes. Song Qingshu rolled his eyes and suddenly came up with a plan. "Madam, I'm a bit cold. Can I get under the quilt?" The beautiful woman under the quilt trembled, but she still didn't answer. Since Madam doesn't say anything, I'll assume that Madam has agreed. Song Qingshu's ability to hit a snake with a stick was probably the best in the world. After getting under the quilt, Song Qingshu immediately smelled a refreshing fragrance. He couldn't help but ask curiously, "What kind of rouge does Madam use? It smells really good." "Madam is asleep." After a long time, Cheng Yaojia finally said. Song Qingshu couldn't help but smile. He didn't say anything and directly wrapped his arms around her slender waist. What do you want to do?" Cheng Yaojia's voice couldn't help but tremble. At this time, she suddenly felt that it was a mistake for her to let him sleep with her. "Madam, please rest assured. I just can't sleep without hugging something. I absolutely won't do anything else," Song Qingshu said as he twisted his body as if adjusting his position. Cheng Yaojia was silent and didn't speak. Her face was as white as a sheet. She thought that if he didn't stiffly hold her, his words would have some degree of credibility. However, when she entered the door today, she had already mentally prepared herself. Even if the other party really did something to her, she wouldn't resist. After all, she wanted the other party to save her husband, who knew that, after waiting for a long time, the man behind her didn't move. She summoned her courage and looked back. She discovered that the other party had already begun to snore. Cheng Yaojia was angry and amused at the same time. She wondered if he was still a man. How could he fall asleep while hugging such a beautiful woman like her? However, after finding it funny, she let out a deep sigh of relief. Her tense state of mind finally relaxed. Immediately, She felt sleepy and unknowingly fell asleep. Song Qing-shu, who was behind her, slowly opened his eyes. He knew that no matter how bold a woman was, she would inevitably be afraid when things came to a head. If it didn't fall asleep first, she would absolutely not dare to sleep. Seeing that she had fallen asleep, her eyebrows unconsciously knitted together. Song Qing-shu sighed. During this period of time, she had been scared too much. Too many things had happened in the past 2 days. Song Qing-shu had to seriously think about what to do next. Originally, he was still having a headache about how to break the alliance between Li Kexio and the Southern Song dynasty. Who knew that Wang Baobao would suddenly interfere and solve this problem for him by a free combination of factors. However, he couldn't be happy too early. After all, Mongolia also wanted to win over Li Kexio. If Li Kexio was moved by Wang Baobao, it would be even worse. Therefore, he had to save the Southern Song dynasty's diplomatic mission. At the same time, he could push the boat with the current to increase Cheng Yaojia's favorability. However, when to save them to maximize his benefits was a big problem. Moreover, there were many experts in the Ryong Palace. It would not be easy to save them. Thinking about these things, Song Qing-shu also unknowingly fell asleep. The next morning, when Cheng Yaojia was about to wake up, she felt her body was a bit heavy. She subconsciously twisted her body and suddenly froze. She recalled everything that happened last night. Slowly opening her eyes, she was surprised to find that the man's 2 thick thighs were tightly wrapped around her, and his lower abdomen was tightly pressed against her buttocks. Cheng Yaojia's face immediately turned red. She was not a virgin. How could she not know what it was? She twisted her body and tried to get out of his arms. However, she found that her whole body was tightly held by him. There was not even a trace of loosening. Song Qing-shu mumbled in a daze. He casually grabbed her and muttered, "So soft." Cheng Yaojia's whole body stiffened. She looked down in disbelief and found that the other party's big hands had unknowingly reached into her clothes. Thanks to Baidu, I have lost my virginity. Good name, Bingo Ice Fruit, Obsessive Rain. This name was unexpectedly rejected by the system, so I can only add points and other enthusiastic support from her book friends. Now, she could barely hold on to the 20th place. Chapter 1045. After a night's sleep, Miss Cheng had already lost the courage she had last night. She was so embarrassed that she didn't know what to do. At this time, she suddenly felt the man beside her move, as if he was about to wake up. She was so scared that she quickly closed her eyes and pretended to sleep again. Seeing Mississippi Cheng close her eyes again, a playful smile appeared on Song Qing-shu's face. In fact, he had woken up as soon as she moved. He deliberately pretended to sleep because he wanted to tease her. "Hey, you can sleep so peacefully in a strange man's bed," Song Qing-shu deliberately said. Miss Cheng's fingers tightly pinched the hem of her clothes. Since she was pretending to sleep, she could only pretend to the end. "It's really soft." Song Qing-shu mischievously moved his hand again, causing Miss Cheng's whole body to tremble. When a man woke up in the morning, he was always full of energy. Song Qing-shu felt that the beauty in his arms was soft, and he couldn't help but rub it a few times. Miss Cheng bit her lips and endured, but at this time, she really couldn't pretend anymore. Just as she was about to explode, Song Qing-shu let go of her and directly got out of bed. Listening to the sound, it seemed that he was putting on his clothes. Miss Cheng thought that this person was really bad. Did he think that she didn't know that he was bullying her? However, she was pretending to sleep, so she could only continue to curl up on the bed. "Madam, it's time to get up. The sun is shining on your butt." Finally, she didn't have to pretend anymore. Miss Cheng secretly let out a sigh of relief. However, her face quickly turned red because of his words. How could he call someone to wake up like this? What sun is shining on your butt? Song Qing-shu didn't expect that his catchphrase from his previous life would make her blush again. He looked at her shyly, sitting on the bed and wrapping the quilt tightly around her body. He couldn't help but find it funny and said, "Madam, why are you doing this? It's not like I didn't see you last night. You even touched it." Cheng Yaojia thought indignantly. Last night was last night. Today is today. Miss Chung wrapped herself in the quilt and said with a red face, Okay, I won't disturb Madam's grooming. Song Qingshu smiled and walked out. He even closed the door for her. I'll ask someone to bring you some water for you to wash up later. Hey, Chung Yaojiao was anxious and quickly shouted. No. Song Qingshu stopped at the door, his face full of question marks. Can you bring me some water? As soon as she said that, Chung Yaojia felt that she had gone too far. She hurriedly added, I don't want others to see me. I'll spend the night in your room. Originally, she thought that a person of such high status would leave in a huff, but to her surprise, the reply she got was a warm and genial smile. Sure, please wait a moment. After Song Qingshu left, Chung Yaojia was still in a daze. She muttered to herself, he's really a good man. After Song Qingshu finished washing and grooming himself, he asked the servants to prepare a clean handkerchief and a basin of water. He personally fetched a basin of clear water and brought it to the door. He had just knocked on the door to call Chung Yaojia, who would have thought that Song Go-tu, with a smile on his face, would come over from the rockery. Good morning, younger brother. Song Go-tu cupped his hands in greeting. Suddenly, he noticed the basin of water in Qin Sheng's hand and couldn't help but fly into a rage. What are the servants doing in this garden? How could they let you personally do these things? Song Qingshu's face was gloomy. Before he could think of how to answer, the door creaked open and Chung Yaojia walked out. You're back. At this time, she also saw Song Go-tu, who was not far from her, and the faint smile on her face immediately froze. Oh, so you're trying to make a beauty smile. Song Go-tu immediately showed an expression of understanding. Younger brother's thought is something that I, your older brother, am unable to catch up to. Chung Yaojia was so embarrassed that she snatched the basin of water from Song Qingshu's hand and slammed the door shut. Song Qingshu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. What was going on? He had put in so much effort, but in the end, he still didn't get any benefits. Seeing that the door was shut in his face, Song Go-tu resisted the urge to laugh and walked over. Younger brother, it's not that your older brother wants to talk too much, but sometimes women can't be too good to them. Otherwise, they will step on your nose and rub your face. Song Qingshu had no interest in talking to him about how to handle women. He hastily interrupted him and said, May I know why older brother Suo has come so early? Oh, it's like this, Song Go-tu said with a smile. Today, Yangzhou's weaving factory is holding a banquet and inviting us to their mansion for a chat. Haha, we brothers don't need to treat each other as outsiders. Yangzhou's weaving factory is a very lucrative position. These past few years, they have not been stingy. This time, they must have prepared a generous gift for us. Listening to this, Song Qingshu frowned slightly. He had never liked these kinds of officialdom shady dealings. Moreover, he still had important things to do today. How could he be willing to waste time socializing with Yangzhou's officialdom? Thereupon, he tactfully declined and said, Many thank for older brother Suo's kindness, but these past 2 days I've been too tired. I want to rest in the garden. Too tired? Song Go-tu stretched out his neck to look at the closed door and window of the room behind him. Immediately, he revealed a knowing smile. Facing this kind of fresh young woman, not many men can control themselves. Since it's like this, I won't disturb younger brother any longer. Huh. Originally, Song Go-tu was quite afraid of Tang Quobian's purpose in coming here. Now that he saw Tang Quobian obsessed with women, it couldn't be any better. Song Qingshu saw Song Go-tu off and returned to his room. He found Chung Yaojia leaning over the table and sobbing. He couldn't help but be startled. Hastily, he walked over and held her shoulder. Madam, who made you sad? Chung Yaojia immediately sat up straight and stared at him with a tear-stained face. Isn't it you? Me? Song Qingshu looked puzzled. You let me happen to be seen by others in your room. My reputation will be completely ruined. The more Chung Yaojia spoke, the sadder she became. She had just excitedly ran out to greet him. Who would have thought that there were other people by his side? So it's this. Song Qingshu couldn't help but comfort her. Don't worry, Song Go-tu doesn't know who you are. Moreover, he is one of the top officials in the Qing imperial court. Why would he care about your matter? In the blink of an eye, he will forget about it. Moreover, Out of consideration for my face, he definitely won't spread our relationship in private. Therefore, Madam doesn't need to worry. Really? Cheng Yaojia asked suspiciously. Of course it's true. Look at you crying like a little tabby cat. Quickly freshen up, I'll take you out. Song Qingshu smiled as he bent his finger to wipe the tears on her cheeks. After last night's matter, their relationship had unknowingly developed to a new height. This kind of intimate action was done very naturally by Song Qingshu. Although Cheng Yaojia was somewhat shy, she didn't think it was inappropriate. Do you want me to comb your hair for you? Song Qingshu asked with a smile. There's no need. Cheng Yaojia was originally somewhat tempted, but when she thought of the electric numbness she felt when his hands stroked her hair last night, she couldn't muster up the courage to try it. Moreover, they were in broad daylight. Without the cover of the night, her courage from last night had already disappeared without a trace. Where are we going later? While combing her hair, Cheng Yaojia asked in order to dispel the awkwardness in her heart. Didn't you always want me to save your husband? Song Qingshu reached out his hand and gently lifted a strand of her hair. Chapter 1046. Really? Miss Chung stood up in pleasant surprise. She didn't even mind that the other party was playing with her hair. Of course it's true. Song Qingshu pressed down on her shoulders and made her sit back down. He casually combed her hair and said, However, Madam shouldn't be happy too early. We're going to the Clear Jade Temple to scout for information. We won't immediately save young Master Lu and the others. Yes, I understand. Miss Chung was a well-educated and reasonable person. In addition, Song Qingshu had explained the reason to her last night, so she didn't have too much of a reaction. I won't disturb you anymore. After you finish washing up, let's set off. Song Qingshu went out and called the soldiers to give them some instructions. Not long after, Miss Chung also came out. Madam is really beautiful today. Looking at the gentle and elegant Jiangnan woman in front of him, Song Qingshu couldn't help but praise her. Miss Chung blushed and didn't reply. Instead, she changed the topic and said, Where are we going now? The Clear Jade Temple? We're going to eat breakfast now, Song Qingshu said with a mysterious expression. An hour later, Miss Chung and Song Qingshu were sitting by the window of a restaurant on the second floor near the Clear Jade Temple. They were able to observe the situation in the Clear Jade Temple. This time, you went to Yangzhou in secret. In addition, so many things happened later. I'm afraid you won't have the opportunity to eat a good meal. The breakfast in Yangzhou is good. Madam should try it. Song Qingshu put a snack in her bowl. How can I be in the mood to enjoy right now? Moreover, Miss Chung looked at the table full of dishes and thought that this was too exaggerated. It was just breakfast. It is useless for Madam to worry too much right now. The only thing you can do is eat well and sleep well. Conserve your energy. When the time is right, you will have the energy to save young Master Lu and the others. Madam also doesn't want to faint from hunger before seeing your husband, right? Song Qingshu said. It's not that exaggerated. Cheng Yaojia couldn't help but smile. But to a certain extent, the other party's words had enlightened her. Thinking that she was conserving her strength to save her husband, her appetite gradually improved. The two of them ate and chatted. However, Miss Cheng's eyes would occasionally glance in the direction of the Pure Jade Monastery. Song Qingshu knew what she was thinking, but he didn't expose her. At the same time, he was also carefully observing the situation in the Crystal Monastery. Unexpectedly, the Clear Jade Monastery did not show any abnormalities. There were even many commoners going in and out, as if nothing had happened last night. Wang Baobao is truly a genius. Song Qingshu was secretly impressed. To be able to control the Pure Jade Monastery in such a short period of time, and even create a peaceful atmosphere. If it was him, he might not have done as well as Song Qingshu. Looks like the Mongolians are planning to occupy this place and live here. Song Qingshu secretly thought that after he took Cheng Yaojia back last night, he was afraid that the Mongolians would kidnap the southern Song people and hide them in some unknown place. Thereupon, he ordered his imperial bodyguards to quietly follow them. When he found out that the Mongolians did not come out of the Pure Jade Monastery, He still had some doubts in his heart, so he came here early in the morning to check. Sure enough, it was exactly the same as what the spy had reported. Song Qingshu's sharp eyes even saw a few old acquaintances of the Ryong mansion coming in and out. He couldn't help but think, Wang Baobao is doing this to let Li Kaxiu come and negotiate with me. The morning gradually passed. Song Qingshu also roughly understood the patrolling pattern of the experts of the Ryong mansion. Just as he was thinking about whether he should leave first, a cursing voice suddenly came from the stairway. That Jinx has been chasing and chasing. I don't know why he is so desperate. The Wang woman is his aunt. Since he has this opportunity, of course he will try to please her. A delicate and clear voice echoed, but the tone was cold without the slightest warmth. Song Qingshu was startled. This voice sounded like, immediately after, a strange pair appeared at the stairway. One was a short and ugly hunchback, while the other was a slender young girl with black hair that fell over her shoulders. The young girl's chin was pointed, and her face was pale and smooth without the slightest blemish. She had a small cherry mouth, very thin lips, and 2 rows of fine teeth that looked like broken jade. Although there was no lack of beautiful women in Jiangnan, it was rare to see someone as beautiful as her, not to mention that she was accompanied by an ugly hunchback. What are you looking at? Believe it or not, I will dig out your eyeballs. Noticing everyone's gazes, the young girl frowned. Before she could speak, the ugly hunchback beside her took the initiative to attack. Seeing that he was so fierce, the guests on the second floor withdrew their gazes. They did not dare to look at the two like before. The hunchback's eyes were sharp. He stopped and swept his gaze over the second floor. When he saw the faint guards standing behind Song Qingshu and Miss Chung, he stopped for a moment. As if he knew that the people at this table were not to be trifled with, he led the young girl in another direction. After sitting down, the hunchback slammed the table and yelled in a rather arrogant manner, "Waiter, bring all the delicious food and drinks here for me." The beautiful young girl next to him frowned. It was obvious that she could not bear to see his behavior, but for some reason, she refrained from speaking. Miss Chung saw that ever since the two of them went upstairs, Song Qingshu had been staring at the young girl. She did not know why, but she felt a little sour in her heart. She could not help but say, "That girl is really beautiful. She has always been very beautiful," Song Qingshu replied subconsciously. Miss Chung was startled. "Do you know her?" Song Qingshu did not answer her. In his mind, the young girl's tender and affectionate gaze appeared several months ago as she lay in his arms. He suddenly felt a little guilty. Originally, he had agreed to look for her after rescuing the Wudong people. Who knew that the Jin Kingdom would delay him for so long? This beautiful young girl was naturally Mu Wanqing. After the two of them parted last time, she had followed her mother's orders to go to Montoa Villa to cause trouble for Madame Wang. He did not know why she had appeared here, and the person next to her, Song Qingshu, looked at the hunchback with an unfriendly expression. He saw that he was ugly and his clothes were not like those of the Central Plains. He also had a hunchback sword on his waist. Could it be him? Song Qingshu began to count the famous hunchbacks in the Golden Book. Suddenly, he thought of one person. It was Mu Gaofeng, the Northern Ming hunchback from the smiling, proud Jianghu. His various characteristics were incomparably compatible. Could it be that Wanqing has been controlled by him? Song Qingshu frowned, but he quickly dispelled this idea. After all, looking at their current situation, Mu Wanqing did not look like she had been held captive. In addition, it was not convenient for his identity to be exposed at this time. Since Mu Wanqing was not in any danger at this time, Song Qingshu planned to wait and see. He would wait until they reached a secluded place before rescuing Mu Wanqing. Because Mu Gaofeng had been too fierce, the waiter did not dare to be negligent. He quickly served the wine and dishes. Looking at the table full of dishes, Mu Gaofeng's eyes suddenly lit up. He immediately rolled up his sleeves and began to eat. Mu Wanqing's table manners were much more elegant than his, but it was still obvious that she was also very hungry. How could you let her suffer such grievances? Seeing the situation between the two of them, Song Qingshu suddenly became furious and stood up. Thank you, big brother Tion, Ghostling Holy Shadowblade, Bingo Big Ice Fruit, King of Meat Pigeons, WayMO, and the others for their tips. Everyone is too awesome. The monthly votes have actually rushed to the 16th place and are only 19 votes away from the 15th place. Yesterday, I posted pictures of Xiaotong, Renying, Chu Fian, and Nanlon on the public account. What do you think? Although this novel may never be made into a movie or TV series, we can make a strong cast ourselves. Anyway, fantasy is free, huh? Welcome everyone to the WeChat public account. Monk Lu Ru. Chapter 1047. Song Qingshu had originally planned to rescue Mu Wanxing even if he had to expose himself. Who knew that at this time, another person would come up the stairs. Your Excellency should eat more. After this meal, I'm afraid there won't be another one. A handsome young man walked up and sneered as he looked at Mu Gaofeng, who was gluttonously eating. Morong Fu. Song Qingshu recognized this person and couldn't help but be startled. What was going on? Seeing that Morong Fu had come from Mu Gaofeng, Song Qingshu hesitated for a moment and decided to observe the situation first. What's wrong with you? Seeing his abnormal behavior, Miss Chung asked worriedly. Nothing, Song Qingshu replied casually. His gaze was fixed on Mu Wanxing, afraid that something would happen to her. Oh, previously, he had been very protective of her, but now his attention was obviously attracted by the other girl. Miss Chung suddenly felt a sense of loss. Although she told herself that there was nothing between the two of them and that he didn't need to be responsible for her, she still couldn't help but feel her heart ache. Seeing Morong Fu appear, Mu Gaofeng's figure trembled. He subconsciously touched the camel's sword at his waist and wanted to get up. However, seeing that Morong Fu didn't intend to immediately attack, he sat back down. I will eat and drink when I want. I will live a long life. Is that so? Morong Fu smiled non-committally and didn't argue with him. Instead, he called for the waiter and began to gracefully order food. Obviously, he had been chasing after her all this time and was very hungry. Seeing that Morong Fu didn't attack, Mu Gaofeng began to eat again. He made up his mind that he would first eat and drink his fill. Only then would he have the strength to fight. Song Qingshu turned a blind eye to the hostile atmosphere in the scene and only had Mu Wanxing in his eyes. He blamed himself endlessly in his heart. He was really too careless earlier and did not notice that she was travel-stained all along the way. It looked like the two of them were avoiding Morong Fu's pursuit. However, why would she be together with a person like Mu Gaofeng who was completely unrelated to her? Big beard, what are you looking at? Although Song Qingshu had good intentions, now that he was wearing Tang Kuobian's appearance, in Mu Wanxing's eyes, it wasn't the same thing. Mu Wanxing only felt that a strange man was staring at her without blinking, and his face was full of beard, which was simply repulsive. During this period of time, she was already in a bad mood, and seeing him lecherously staring at her, she immediately raised her hand, and a black light shot towards him. Ding! The bodyguard beside her hurriedly pulled out a knife and struck the poisoned sleeve arrow that she shot out to the ground. He pointed at her in shock and anger. How dare you? You dare to assassinate our Darren. Just as he was about to rush over and capture her, Song Qingshu waved his hand to stop him. Stop! Picking up the poisoned sleeve dart from the ground, Song Qingshu thought to himself that she still had such a fiery temper towards outsiders. Comparing it to the gentleness she used to treat him, his heart immediately warmed. He took the sleeve dart and walked over to Mu Wanxing. Miss Sleeve Dart has fallen. Please keep it. Mu Wanxing looked surprised. She hesitated whether to shoot him again. The two of them were so close, there was no reason for her to miss. However, she was afraid of the guard next to him. In addition, now that they were facing a great enemy, she didn't want to cause unnecessary trouble. She could only snort coldly and snatch the sleeve dart back. Then, she turned her head to the side. Obviously, she didn't even have the mood to reply. Song Qingshu couldn't help laughing. This little girl really had a character. How dare you? The guard next to him glared at him when he saw his master being insulted. "It's okay." Song Qingshu stopped his loyal guard and said to Mu Wanqing with a smile, "Miss, if you need any help later, you can ask. One who is unaccountably solicitous is hiding evil intentions." Mu Wanqing finally responded to him, but her tone was quite rude. "Don't make enemies out of nothing." Mu Gaofeng, who was next to her, hurriedly gave her a look and reminded her in a low voice. Mu Wanqing rolled her eyes in annoyance, but she didn't make any further aggressive moves. Song Qingshu smiled slightly. He didn't mind and returned to his seat. "What? You also have the door shut in your face?" Seeing him come back with his face covered in dirt, Miss Qing couldn't help but smile inexplicably. "I didn't expect Madam to learn bad things." "You actually took pleasure in my misfortune," Song Qingshu said snappily. "After being with you for so long, it's hard not to learn bad things." Miss Chung pursed her lips and smiled. On the other side, Murong Fu looked deeply at the two people who were teasing each other. The guard's knife technique was very fast and accurate. With such a guard by his side, this person's identity must be extraordinary. Murong Fu couldn't help but be careful. After all, Song Qingshu had shown enough affection for Mu Wanqing. If they really fought later, it was hard to guarantee that he wouldn't give the order to help. However, Murong Fu quickly shook his head and laughed at himself for being overly cautious. He, the dignified Nim Murong, was also famous in Jianghu. How could he be afraid of this person who didn't know if he was an official or a merchant? Although the martial arts of the other party's bodyguard was good, it was still far inferior to him. Although Song Qingshu was teasing Miss Chung, with his cultivation, he was able to see and hear in all directions. Murong Fu's reaction didn't escape his eyes. Song Qingshu sighed inwardly. When his meridians were broken and he was at the end of his rope, if it wasn't for Murong Fu introducing him to Wang Yuyan, he probably wouldn't be where he was today. However, he had already repaid this kindness several times over. In addition, Murong Bo had previously captured Song Yuanxiao and the others. Later, he had crippled Murong Bo's finger. A grudge had already been formed between him and the Murong clan. It was destined that it would be difficult for them to become friends in the future. Thump, thump, thump. A group of people of all ages came up the stairs. The middle-aged man in the lead was modest and elegant. He had an awe-inspiring righteous aura and a faint purple aura on his face. Standing beside him was a beautiful middle-aged woman. She had a pretty face, and her whole person seemed to be threatening. After the two of them came up, they quickly noticed the strange atmosphere on this floor and couldn't help but stop. "Father, why did you suddenly stop?" A young girl suddenly jumped out from behind him. Her figure was slim and graceful, and her voice was crisp and tender. She seemed extremely lively and cute. Senior's sister, the last person to come up, was a delicate and beautiful young man. He had delicate features and was very handsome. His lips were red and his teeth were white. It was as if he was a woman disguised as a man. He had obviously noticed the strange atmosphere upstairs and quietly pulled on the young girl's sleeve. Song Qingshu couldn't help but feel happy. No wonder the inns in the games of his previous life were places where incidents frequently occurred. Why was it that every time he came to the inns, he would encounter all kinds of excitement? Chapter 1048. This time, Yu Buchuan didn't catch the fox, and instead got himself into trouble. Many people in Jianghu had their eyes on the Bixia sword manual. Even though Mount Hua wasn't as easy to bully as Fu Wei Escort Company, they still had a lot of people. Huashan had been in a difficult situation for the past few years, so Yu Buchuan had developed a cautious character. He was keenly aware that an undercurrent was forming against the Huashan sect, so he immediately made a prompt decision and set up a few diversion routes. The entire Huashan sect broke up and returned to Huashan from different directions. Mount Hua was northwest of Fuzhou, but he went the opposite way. He took his wife, daughter, and Lin Pingji to the east and finally arrived at Yangzhou. Thinking about how he had gone around in circles, Yu Buchuan cursed in his heart, especially the culprit who stole the Bixia sword manual. Yu Buchuan had cursed him countless times in secret. He had even cursed him for not having any descendants or having his wife stolen. If other people in Jianghu knew what he was cursing, his reputation as a gentleman's sword would be destroyed. But if he didn't curse like this, he wouldn't be able to get rid of the hatred in his heart. Back then, the battle between the Qi and sword sects had greatly damaged the strength of Mount Hua sect. After the rise of Mount Song's sect, Mount Hua sect became even more unstable. Yu Buchuan had been treading on thin ice day and night, barely managing to maintain Mount Hua sect. However, it was still a long time before he could make a comeback. After thinking about it for a long time, Yu Buchuan could only think of the Bixie sword manual. Compared to Yu Songhai, Yu Buchuan was much smarter. He planned step by step. Lin Pingji also joined his sect, and, at the same time, he had a deep relationship with his daughter. This time, he thought that the manual was already in his bag, but who knew that someone else would get it first? Decades of hard work was destroyed in one day. How could Yu Buchuan not be angry? After arriving at Yangzhou, they wanted to find a restaurant to rest, but who knew that when they went upstairs, they would find a strange atmosphere of hostility. During this time, Yu Buchuan's mind had been stretched taut, so how could he not be hesitant when he saw the situation inside? Father, why did you suddenly stop? Yu Lingshan had no schemes and naturally didn't know what her father was worried about. Nothing, let's sit. At this time, Yu Buchuan had already clearly seen the situation on the second floor. He roughly guessed that the other party wasn't coming for him and immediately felt relieved. Okay. Yu Lingshan hopped to an empty table and waved at Lin Pingji. Little Lin, come sit here. Seeing this, Ning Zhongzi couldn't help but secretly smile at his husband. This child, Shan, her heart is completely focused on Pingji. I think it's better to settle their marriage as soon as possible. Otherwise, as a girl, it's not good for Shan'er to be so attached to Pingji all the time. Shan'er is still young. Let's talk about this later. Yu Buchuan coldly said, then walked over and sat down. Ning Zhongzi couldn't help but be startled. He didn't understand why his husband's attitude took a 180-degree turn. Previously, when he mentioned the marriage of the two children to him, he was quite supportive of it. Unfortunately, she didn't know that this time, the Bixie swordplay had been taken by someone else. It could be said that Lin Pingji's value was almost gone. Of course, Yu Buchuan's attitude also became cold. Song Qingshu saw their reactions and was wondering why people from Huashan would appear in Yangzhou. Suddenly, he heard Lin Pingji slam the table and stand up. Mu Gaofeng, you bastard! You wanted to see my family's Bixie swordplay, and you killed my father and mother. Today I, Lin Pingji, will make you pay for this blood feud. Yu Buchuan frowned. This trip, he had been deliberately concealing his tracks, but this kid just shouted it out. He was afraid that in a few days, everyone in Jianghu would know where they were. Mu Gaofeng couldn't help but be startled. Years ago, when he forced Lin Pingji, he disguised himself as a little hunchback. He wasn't as handsome as he was now, so he didn't recognize him at first glance. What does your father and mother's death have to do with me? Mu Gaofeng coldly snorted, but the arrogance in his heart was aroused. He didn't explain, but instead laughed and said, You little brat, that day in Mount Heng's Lu Zhengfeng's house, you disguised yourself as a hunchback and kowtowed to me. You call me grandpa and risked your life to make me accept you as a disciple. Grandpa refused, so you joined old Yu's sect and deceived a wife. Am I right? Yu Lingshan's face turned bright red. Half of it was because of anger, and the other half was because of embarrassment. However, at this moment, she looked at Lin Pingji with a face full of worry. Little Lin, I'm afraid you are still not his opponent. For a gentleman to take revenge, 10 years is not too late. In fact, she was already very polite. Normally, when the two of them practiced swordsmanship, Lin Pingji couldn't even beat her. Lin Pingji ignored her and stared straight at Mu Gaofeng. Today, I will kill you to comfort my parents' souls in heaven. A toad talking haha, what a big tone. Mu Gaofeng smiled disdainfully. Although he was chased by Murong Fu to the point of being battered and exhausted, he was still the famous Nan Murong in the martial arts world. Compared to him, who was this Lin Pingji? Who knew that as soon as he finished laughing, he felt his vision blur. Fortunately, his decades of fighting in the underworld had made his reaction extremely fast. He took out the hunchback's sword at his waist and was able to block Lin Pingji's murderous sword. My goodness, how can Manhua's sect be so powerful? This brat has only been in Mount Hua for a few years, but he has already learned such a powerful swordsmanship. Mu Gaofeng was so scared that he broke out in a cold sweat. Lin Pingji snorted and suddenly changed his swordsmanship. Mu Gaofeng was immediately thrown into confusion. How did Pingji's martial arts suddenly become so powerful? Ning Zhongzi looked at his husband with a puzzled expression. Yu Buchuan didn't answer, but stared closely at Lin Pingji's swordsmanship. He didn't even dare to blink. Yu Buchuan had been thinking about the Bixia swordsmanship all this time. Suddenly seeing such an exquisite swordsmanship from Lin Pingji, he subconsciously thought that it was the Bixia swordsmanship manual. He couldn't help but be surprised and happy. It turned out that this brat had already obtained the Bixia swordsmanship manual. He really hid it from me. Not only him, even a knowledgeable Murong Fu put down his wine cup and stared closely at the two people in the battle. He couldn't help but exclaim, "Really good swordsmanship." Song Qing-shu was the only one who could see clearly. He sighed in his heart. It seemed that this brat Lin Pingji had really put in a lot of effort in this swordsmanship. It turned out that this wasn't the Bixia swordsmanship. When Song Qing-shu went to Mount Hua, he taught Lin Pingji the 5 great mountain swordsmanship because they were in the same boat. Lin Pingji looked weak, but he was extremely shrewd. Because of the tragedy of his parents, he subconsciously didn't dare to trust anyone. Therefore, he didn't tell Yu Buchuan and his wife about this matter. He just quietly practiced in secret. Usually, even in the most critical moments, he would hold back. Until today, when he encountered his enemy, Mu Gaofeng, he finally used his full strength. Not long after, Mu Gaofeng's roars could be heard. It turned out that there were several injuries on his body. It was obvious that he was at a disadvantage. Today, I released the first episode of Nutrition Express on the official account. I want to use this program to share and exchange benefits and resources for everyone. If the content is done by me alone, I'm afraid that it will be emptied very quickly. Therefore, I need to use the power of the masses. I hope that if everyone has any delightful or beneficial collections to share, sharing resources can lead to common progress. If anyone has resources, you can use the official account. Monk Lu Ru to leave a message for me. You can also send me a message through the reader group. Thank you. Chapter 1049. Everyone's reaction was different. Yuling Shan's face was full of joy, while Ning Zhongzi looked worriedly at her husband. After all, secretly learning martial arts in Jianghu was a big taboo. Yu Buchuan's face was expressionless as he stared at Lin Pingji's swordsmanship. He was getting more and more puzzled. Why does this swordsmanship look so familiar? On the other side, Murong Fu, because of his family's long history, was familiar with the martial arts of all the sects in the world. He was the first to see the trick. He thought to himself, this young man is actually using the long-lost swordsmanship of the 5 Mountain Sword sect. Could it be that the Huashan sect has been hiding its strength? Presumably, these people made Mu Wanqing nervous. She squeezed the sword in her hand several times, trying to step forward to help. But when she looked at Yu Buchuan and the others on the other side, she was worried that if she rushed over, it would give them a justifiable excuse to bully him. Cheng Yaojia thoughtfully said to Song Qing-shu, "That girl is worried to death. Are you distressed?" Song Qing-shu turned his head and looked at her with a faint smile. "Why is Madam so concerned about my relationship with that girl? Are you jealous?" "Bah, why would I be jealous?" Cheng Yaojia was embarrassed. She quickly lowered her head and drank her tea to hide the embarrassment in her heart. Song Qing-shu did not continue to tease her. "Don't worry. Although Lin Pingji's swordsmanship is brilliant, his internal energy is insufficient. It will be difficult for him to cause a fatal injury. Mu Gaofeng's body looks miserable, but in fact, he only has a few small wounds. Once he gets used to Lin Pingji's swordsmanship, it will be the beginning of his counterattack. Lin Pingji? Mu Gaofeng? Cheng Yaojiao was startled. Do you know them? Song Qingshu was startled. He did not expect that he would inadvertently spill the beans. But this was not a big problem. He took the opportunity to tease her. I know a lot of things. For example, how thin Madam's waist is. Don't say it. Cheng Yaojiao was extremely embarrassed. Sure enough, he had diverted her attention. As if to prove Song Qingshu's words, Mu Gaofeng roared and attacked with his sword 3 times in a row. All of them were fighting head-on. Lin Pingji's expression changed. He didn't want to clash with Mu Gaofeng's sword, so he hurriedly dodged to the side. Mu Gaofeng laughed. He had been fighting in the underworld for so many years and was very experienced. He immediately attacked 3 more times, and Lin Pingji could only retreat. This way, the offensive and defensive positions were reversed. After all, Lin Pingji was not experienced enough. Under the pressure of his opponent's inner energy, his sword moves gradually became messy. For a moment, he was in danger. Also, how is this despicable? Cheng Yaojiao realized that she had misunderstood, but she was too embarrassed to explain the reason to him. She could only turn her head and ignore him. On the other side, Yu Buqian got up and walked over to Murong Fu. He cupped his hands and asked, "Is this the Prince Murong who gave him a taste of his own medicine?" Although the two of them had never seen each other before, Yu Buqian naturally thought of Murong Fu for someone who had this kind of cultivation and eyesight at such a young age in Jianghu. Murong Fu hastily got up and returned the greeting. "Sect leader Yu is too polite." "That's me." After the two of them exchanged greetings, Yu Buqian suddenly asked, "I wonder why Prince Murong has come to Yangzhou this time?" Although he had guessed that the other side was not coming for him, he had been frightened by the mere twang of a bow, so he couldn't help but be worried. Murong Fu smiled and looked at Mu Gaofeng and Mu Wanqing, saying, "These two injured a lot of people in my aunt's mansion. This time, I specifically came to capture them and hand them over to Aunt to deal with." So that's how it is. Yu Buqian's eyes flashed. He was considering whether or not to help Murong Fu. After all, with his or Murong Fu's martial arts, they could easily defeat Mu Gaofeng. If the two of them joined hands, it would be easy to capture them. Not only would they sell a favor to Murong Fu, but they would also be able to avenge Lin Pingji. Afterwards, it would be easier to inquire about the origin of the sword technique from his mouth. Mu Gaofeng cursed in his heart. This hypocrite Yu Buqian is going to hit me when I'm down. At this time, a group of people noisily came up the stairs. When Cheng Yaojia saw the appearance of one of them, she cried out in alarm and subconsciously turned around. Thanks to the celestial men, Tianxia Jiayu, Amber Cat, WSKCJ Baidu, Wretched 2, Xiao Xiang, Shuyu 1742, 5192, ZLF 833520, and other enthusiastic book friends gifts. Now that the monthly votes list had fallen by 1 place, they couldn't resist Ji Zun taking action. That you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.